So just because a story doesn't take place in the Appalachian Mountains, it doesn't make it any less scary. And tonight's story is the perfect example of that. So with that being said, let's jump right into tonight's story. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. But before I get into tonight's story, I wanted to show you guys something that was sent to me that's truly so special. So a few months ago, a sweet woman named Michelle reached out and she wanted to make me something special for Tea After Midnight. And this is the beautiful piece that she created, as well as this beautiful spoon. When I tell you guys I opened this up yesterday and I ugly cried, I mean it. Because just to look at this and know how much time and effort she spent into making this, it just brought happy tears to my eyes, because this is one of the most beautiful pieces that I've ever seen. She handcrafted every part of this, and it's so special, and I'm so honored that I get to have a piece of her artwork in my home. And Michelle, if you're watching, I just want to take the time to say thank you so much for all the time and the energy and the love that you spent putting into crafting this. It is truly so beautiful, and I will treasure this forever. I'm going to tag Michelle in this video, so if you guys could, please go over there, give her a follow, show her a lot of love on her videos. She truly deserves it. And with that being said, let's jump right into tonight's story. This story comes from Emma. Hey Savannah, my name is Emma, and I have a scary story that took place when I was in middle school. I've watched your videos for a while now and have been contemplating whether or not to share my own story. I've been scared to relive this moment, but I think it's time I told someone. It was the last day of 7th grade, and my friends decided that we should have a sleepover to celebrate finishing the school year. The sleepover was huge, with around 15 girls. We were all going to my friend's house, whose name I'll keep private for her sake. We will call her Jamie. Jamie lived about 15 minutes out of the city. I live in a rural town in Wisconsin, so this far out meant she lived completely isolated from everyone. The nearest neighbor was a 5-minute drive, and her house was on a big lot with at least 10 acres of woods in her backyard. The sleepover started out as your classic teenage girl hangout: prank calling, painting nails, braiding hair, gossiping, etc. That is, until it began to get dark outside and one of my friends suggested we played sardines in the woods. So if you don't know what sardines in the woods means, I didn't either. I had to look it up, and it basically said it's a reverse hide and seek. So one person hides and everybody else seeks. Everyone was very enthusiastic about playing, including myself. Some girls were scared to go out in the woods, so they were the ones who got partners to play with. I have always been interested in scary stuff like ghost stories and horror films, so I thought going alone would be very exciting. Everyone was provided a flashlight and had to turn in their phones so no cheating could take place. Jamie was the first to go hide because it was her house and she knew her way around the woods the best. The starting time was 10:50, and we were told to give her about 5 minutes to find a good place to hide. After the time was up, everyone ran in different directions. Most of the girls went looking in her shed and front yard area, but I ran into the woods thinking she would go deep into them in hopes of finding the best spot to hide. I was shining my flashlight in front of me when I heard a branch snap from behind me. I was pretty deep into the woods, so I figured I bypassed Jamie and she was trying to scoot away from me. I whipped around and started teasingly saying her name. I looked all over the place, but I didn't see her. I stayed in the general location because I figured she couldn't have gone super far. But then my flashlight died. I was surrounded in complete darkness and started to get a little scared. And that's when I started to hear someone whisper my name. I thought it was Jamie trying to give me her location, so I started calling out to it. The whispering was getting louder and started to sound more weird. It was very distorted and almost forced out. I got a super uneasy feeling, and it felt like my heart was going to beat right out of my chest. I dropped my flashlight and started to book it out of the woods towards the direction of the house. When I started running, it sounded like something was behind me, keeping pace with me. Out of terror, I screamed and tried to run even faster. I then saw the lights from the house and 2 of my friends looking into the woods. I ran up to them with rigid breath and they asked me what was wrong. I told them that it sounded like something was chasing me out of the woods and we needed to get back together because Jamie was calling my name. They looked at each other worried, and one of them said that they had found Jamie in some bushes and everyone was waiting for me for at least 10 minutes. They were only by the woods because they heard me scream and got worried. My heart literally sank and I felt like I was going to cry. They took me to the group and everyone wanted to play another round. The only problem was I was the last to find the group, so I was the one who needed to hide this time. I didn't want to seem like a wuss asking to hide with someone, so I kept my fear to myself. However, I did ask for another flashlight because I dropped mine earlier in the woods. They gave me one and said I had 5 minutes to hide. I did not want to hide in the woods because of what happened before, so I went to the other side of her property. There was this little open area with trees in front of it and the woods behind it. I was laying down on the ground so the overgrown grass could give me extra cover. About 4 minutes pass and the sound of the crickets chirping completely stopped. A sense of dread washed over me and I was already terrified of being alone. I shined my flashlight in the woods behind me and I saw the tall grass starting to shift as if someone was crawling in it. I was paralyzed even though my brain was telling me to get up and run. That's when a pair of glowing yellow eyes met mine. The thing stood up and the image is still burned into my mind to this day. It was tall with skinny, long arms and legs, and had hands with long, jagged fingers and yellow nails. It had pale grayish skin and was covered in a deep red substance which I believe was blood. It then went on all fours and crawled behind a tree about 15 feet away from me. Half its body was still showing because the tree was too small to cover it fully, and it was just staring at me. It then stood up again and lunged its way toward me, and I snapped out of my paralyzed state and sprinted for my life towards the house. I heard it running towards me, but when I got close enough to the house, the footsteps stopped. I went into the garage and slammed the door behind me. After 10 minutes of sitting on the floor crying, I got the courage to peek through the window, but I saw nothing. I went inside and called through the patio door that I was done playing. My friends must have known something was wrong based off the sound of my voice. They asked me what was wrong, and I just shook my head saying I was spooked. I didn't tell them what I saw because I didn't want to scare them, and I was scared that if I said anything out loud, it would come back for me. When we went to sleep that night, I made sure I was in the middle of everyone. It did comfort me a little, but I still couldn't fall asleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard 3 slow taps on the window. There were no trees by that area, so I knew it was the thing. I forced my eyes closed and pretended I was asleep. I didn't want to give it attention in hopes that it would leave me alone. I eventually did fall asleep. However, the next morning, I asked Jamie if she had ever seen anything strange in the woods. She told me that she had heard stories from her dad about times he had experienced weird things, but she thought he was just trying to spook her. I just nodded my head and told her to consider listening. She gave me a weird look but said okay. After that sleepover, I went over to her house a couple times but never slept over again. About 5 months later, her family moved away without any warning, and Jamie just said it was for family reasons. But I believe that it was because her family experienced what I did that night. So Emma, I don't know what you saw, but this sounds eerily similar to what my dad saw when he was a kid. A few episodes ago, I shared my dad's personal scary story with you guys, and the creature in that thing sounds identical to what she saw. So I definitely don't know for sure what you saw, but a lot of people were commenting on the other video saying that it was a flesh pedestrian, and honestly, I think I agree. But that's honestly so terrifying that you came that close to something like this. So I genuinely couldn't imagine going outside in the dark anyway, but then to run into a creature like this, absolutely not. So Emma, I know at the end you said you feel a little bit better sharing this. I know that it's so scary having to relive this because going through a scary experience is one thing, but then having to retell the story and relive it in that moment, it just brings up all those feelings that you felt at the time you went through it. So that's terrifying. I'm so sorry you went through that. Thank you for sharing your story with us, though. And if anybody in the comments has any idea what this could be, please let us know. We'd love to figure this out. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I love you so much. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Also, if you've watched this far, leave me a little ghost emoji in the comments. Next week, I have a little announcement for you guys. A giveaway, if you will. So stay tuned for that. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Most terrifying and unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me actually happened in the house that I am currently sitting in. My For You page has been flooded with people who are talking about their haunted experiences and their paranormal experiences, so this is mine. Not new here. You know exactly what story I'm about to tell, and it is about me playing with a Ouija board and opening something that I could not close for many, many years. The purpose of the story is to shed light on the fact that Ouija boards are not toys, and if you believe in God and that God can hear your prayers, you have to believe in the fact that evil entities and the devil can also hear when you are trying to contact them. When I was a freshman in high school, I made a homemade Ouija board with my friend. I have always been obsessed with the supernatural, the paranormal, the unknown, the unexplainable, and I had one previous paranormal experience that tied into this one. My grandfather passed away on Valentine's Day of, I want to say, like 2014. When he died, there were only a handful of us that knew his middle name. We did not publish it on the obituary. It was not like a common knowledge thing. It was a very obscure name. And I remember we were playing this Ouija board in the middle of the day. We had shut all my blinds and meticulously made it so that the room was extremely dark. We lit a candle on the side of a lap table that I had. We set a piece of silver on the corner of the board, and I had cut out a planchette from a playing card. For the first few sessions, I thought my friend was pushing the planchette, so I didn't believe that any of the words that were being spelled out or any of the answers that were being given were real. Eventually, I get sick and tired of it. I say, "You are pushing the planchette." She says, "No, I'm not." So I ask the board, quote, "If you're so real, what is my grandfather's middle name?" And the planchette didn't move. At this point, I am staring at my friend. She is staring back at me, and I said, "I knew you were pushing it." As that sentence is leaving my mouth, the planchette starts to move. It's not violent, it's not anything, it's just gliding over this piece of paper that we had created. There are 5 letters in my grandfather's middle name. By the time the planchette went over the 3rd letter, I took my hands off completely. I did not say goodbye. I did not say anything. I blew the candle out. I said, "I'm done. I don't like this." Got up. I turned all the lights on. I opened the blinds. Like, I was fed up because it horrified me that it was even capable of doing that. And I knew in that instance that the paranormal was real. I had talked to my friend who was like trying to calm me down and told her that, like, let's just go hang out in my backyard. My bedroom in the basement was an outward facing window to the backyard. So if you were standing from inside of my room, you could have totally seen what we were doing out in the yard. My parents at the time had these 2 huge bushes that were on my neighbor's fence line that were right in front of my window, but not covering my window, if that makes sense. So it was like my window, and then the bushes were like on the back fence line, if that makes sense. It was during the time of you went outside and you took pictures and then you like posted them on Instagram. As my friend is taking my photo, hear bum 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 from inside of the window. It's important to note that my parents' house is a walkout ranch, so it very well could have been the 2nd floor. Again, I'm horrified. I run inside, I go up the stairs, I go into my mom's room, and she is dead asleep. My sister's not home, my dad is not home, and my dogs cannot make a noise like that. I wake my mom up, and I remember she did the like when she woke up, the mom wake up. I said, "Why did you scare us?" She said she didn't. I just remember a pit forming in my stomach because, again, I knew what was happening at that point. And for weeks, months, years to follow that experience, we had paranormal activity in our home frequently. I recently talked about my sister's astral projection experience, and that was directly after I had played with the Ouija board. Following that, she had been increasingly sensitive to the paranormal. I remember one night we were sitting on the couch and we had a love seat that was like facing the TV. We had a couch that would like face towards the fireplace, but if you laid down on the couch, like the length of the couch, you were facing the TV, if that makes sense. I don't know. Regardless, my bedroom door was at the like arm of the couch that was closest to the TV. Important to note that my sister and I shared this basement for a long time when we were in high school because it was like apartment style living. I just remember sitting on the couch with her one night and we're talking, the TV's on, my door's open, which is very uncommon. My back is faced towards the door, which is also uncommon because I am extremely scared of the dark. I won't even have my back faced towards it. She can see into the open abyss that is my room. Mid-conversation that I'm having with her, looks up, looks behind me, and says, "I just saw somebody go into your room." I cannot tell you how pissed off I got when that left her mouth because it scared me so bad that I didn't sleep in my room for like a week. And like in retrospect, I know that wasn't the kindest thing to do, but I was so effing scared because things had been happening for a long time. By that point in time, her and I had both seen the same entity multiple times, and I knew exactly what she had seen. It freaked me out. Anyways, talking about this makes me like incredibly nauseous because of how horrifying it was and how terrible it was to go through. So that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Your time to scroll if you don't like paranormal or scary stories. I'm honestly genuinely really weirded out by this one. This one takes place in southwestern Virginia. Papa Squad, I have some questions for all of you at the end. Let's get into reading the email. The email reads, "Hi Casey, this isn't really a scary story, but I think you might find it interesting because it's the kind of stuff you talk about. My family is from southwestern Virginia, way back in the mountains, and I grew up hearing a lot of things I didn't realize were unusual until I got older. I randomly came across your page a few months ago. Think you were doing makeup, so I didn't even know you talked about paranormal stuff yet. But I remember thinking you looked really familiar. You honestly might just have one of those faces. Feel like everybody watching this could probably name somebody you remind them of or someone they think you look like. But then I noticed your eyes. They're that really light gray blue where you almost can't even tell what color they are. In my family, the older woman would have called those mountain eyes. I know that probably sounds ridiculous. There is this belief in my family that certain people were just more knowing than other people. Not psychic, not witches, just knowing. They'd walk into someone's house and immediately feel like something wasn't right. They'd dream about somebody before something happened involving them. Sometimes they'd tell somebody not to take a certain road home and couldn't explain why. My grandmother always said that people like this usually knew that they were different, but didn't necessarily know why. And weirdly, in my family stories, a lot of the women described as being like this had extremely, extremely pale eyes. Gray, gray blue, gray green, basically where you had to look twice to figure out the color. There were stories about women living really deep in the mountains that people would visit when something strange was happening. One supposedly told a man there was a little boy standing near a tree on his property. He didn't have a son. Later, he found out a child had disappeared in the woods years before. Another woman supposedly woke her husband up in the middle of the night and told him his brother was at the river. Next morning, they learned his brother had gotten into trouble at the river the same night. Years later, I started looking into Appalachia folklore and found stories about second sight, basically the belief that certain people could perceive things that other people couldn't. Then I found something even weirder, the moon-eyed people. If you've never heard of them, Google it, because this part is actually folklore. There are old stories about mysterious moon-eyed people in southern Appalachia. Different versions describe them completely different, but some later versions describe very pale people associated with unusual eyesight who supposedly couldn't tolerate daylight well. That's when I started wondering if completely separate stories had gotten blended together in my family over generations. My family never called the intuitive women moon-eyed people. That's a connection I'm making now, but I do remember older relatives occasionally describing somebody as having moon eyes. I found your page. After watching more of your videos, I realized you're apparently really intuitive too. That's what made this so weird to me. You actually have what my family would have been considered a very traditional look for a knowing person. Very light, difficult to place eyes, and honestly just a face that somehow looks familiar even though I've obviously never met you. Showed my mom your page without explaining any of this. She watched you for a few seconds and said she's got mountain eyes. I asked her what she meant even though I already knew. She said she just looks like she would notice things, and that is why I'm emailing you. I'm not saying your eye color makes you psychic, definitely not saying you're secretly a moon-eyed person. Maybe it's literally just an old family superstition or folklore, but have you ever heard anything like this before? I'd really like to know if anybody listening from Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, or anywhere else in Appalachia grew up hearing anything similar, especially the phrase mountain eyes, because I've always assumed this was just weird stuff my own family said. But after reading about second sight and then the moon-eyed people, I'm starting to wonder how many families deep in those mountains have their own version of the exact same story. I want to say thank you to the person for sending that in, even though I am very terrified. You guys, my family is from Virginia. And it gets even weirder than that. Because if you followed me, you know how I've talked about how I've been very intuitive since I've been very young, okay? Well, so is my dad. And the side of my family that is from Virginia is my father's side. Those descriptions were terrifying because it sounds exactly like me, given I have talked about my intuitive stuff on this page. I've talked about dreams that I've had. I've talked about how I've known things before they were going to happen, all sorts of things, right? But I've never mentioned that my family's from Virginia. So that part did spook me. My dad was even born there. They eventually ended up moving to Michigan, where I'm at now. This isn't something I've heard of. I've not heard of the folklore, but my family comes from deep, deep, deep in the mountains. Like, to this day, I still have a few family members way in the mountains. Like, when my family visits Virginia to see a few of my family members, they have to go way back in the woods to find the foundation of what would be like my great grandmother's home. I will say my entire life, people have always talked about how they think my eyes kind of stare in their soul. And I do always, people say, you look so familiar, you look like so-and-so, or you look like so-and-so. My eyes, I can't even tell you what color they are. Depending on what I'm wearing, they'll look green, they'll look blue, they'll look gray, they'll look whatever. Did do a Google search, obviously, after reading this. And these were just some of like the images that I found. I'm going to read up more on it, but I want to know, have any of you guys heard of this? I do have super bad issues with light sensitivity, even going outside. Like, my eyes pulse, it hurts because my eyes are so light. They just reflect so much. And I have makeup on right now, but as you can tell, I'm literally like corpse colored. And I have color right now. I literally have color from being outside. And it's summer. I would greatly appreciate if you guys have any information or if you've heard of this. I'm just going to try to wipe it off as folklore nonsense, but that is so fucking strange that I've not said that on this page. I've not said that my dad's side of the family is from Virginia. I get to the person for sending it. They're not weird. The story is just strange. And now I'm like scared to look at my own eyeballs. I'm literally like creeped out looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, but if you guys have a scary story you want to send to me, as always, here's the email up here. You can send it whenever.
So this guy said that something really weird would happen to his brother, and this all started when he was around 6 years old and would still wet the bed. He remembers that his mom would always get mad at his little brother, and it would always happen night after night. He would wet the bed until he finally decided to tell his mom why he was wetting the bed. The little brother explained to his mom that every night when he really needed to use the restroom, he would walk towards the restroom, but when he would stand right in front of the mirror where you would wash your hands, he would see a woman there. The little brother started describing the woman that he would see, and he would say that she was dressed all in white, that her mouth was sewn shut, and that he could see her like moving her hands in front of the sink, but that there was blood just coming from her hands. The little brother said that she always looked like she was washing her hands, and that she would speak to him. She wouldn't move her mouth, but somehow he can hear her talking in his head, and that she gave him her name. Now he says he's sorry because he's not going to give us the name. He does not want to share that name. It's something that they're so terrified in their household about. Apparently this woman also told him that she was never going to leave him alone. His little brother would run to his bedroom, get on the bed, and well, we know what would happen in his bed after that. Now unfortunately, he says that the mom simply didn't believe him. She thought he had a wild imagination and was making any excuse because he was, peeing the bed. Now when the father heard what the little boy said, he went up to him and said, hey, if you need to go to the restroom tonight and you see the woman that you're talking about, come and get me so that I can speak with her. That very same night, the little boy went to his parents' bedroom, woke up his dad and said, the lady is in front of the mirror right now, go and talk to her. Fuck, dude. I would have locked that door. Do not come in my bedroom. You're scared. I'm scared too. The dad gets up, goes with the little kid to the restroom, and he doesn't see anybody, but he still decides to talk to whatever his son was seeing. And this is what he tells her. What do you want? My son cannot help you, so leave him alone. And that was the last time that his little brother saw that woman at that age. So now years have passed. His little brother is 18 years old, and he went to Tijuana to be a paramedic. And that's when he saw her again. He explains that at that point when he saw her again, his brother almost had a heart attack, and after that moment his brother was never the same again. His brother is now 34 years old, and he cannot go to sleep unless the TV is on or some sort of light is on. The brother explains that if he doesn't go to sleep with the light on or the TV on, something jumps on his bed, they hit him, they take his blanket off of him. The blanket is a fucking shield. What do you mean? They pull on his feet. No. And when he does turn on the TV and the light, all he feels throughout the night is somebody sitting on the bed. Either way, something happens. The brother is no longer a paramedic. He has been a truck driver for the past 8 years. And that is because he prefers 1,000 times to drive at nighttime versus going to sleep. Ever since the last time he saw this lady when he was 18, he hasn't seen her again, and he really hopes it stays that way. But what do you guys think?
After working at the only funeral home in a small town for nearly 18 years, I became very good at recognizing people. Even when I did not know someone personally, I usually knew which family they belonged to. The first time I saw the woman in blue, I assumed she was an out-of-town relative. The second time, several years later, I realized no one else could see her. By the third time she appeared, I knew someone in the room was going to die. So grab a blanket, maybe a snack, and get settled in for tonight's Midnight Confessions, Stories from the Dark. My job involved preparing visitation rooms, arranging flowers and photographs, directing guests, helping families with memorial displays, and making sure each service ran as smoothly as possible. That was how I first noticed the one person I couldn't identify. I saw her at a funeral of a retired local school teacher named Pauline. She had taught elementary school for more than 30 years, so the funeral home was crowded with former students, parents, and teachers. I was standing near the guest book when I noticed a strange woman beside a man named Gordon. Gordon owned the local hardware store and had lived in town his entire life. He was in his early 50s, healthy as far as anyone knew, and related to half the people in the room through marriage. The woman beside him wore a dark blue dress with a high collar and long sleeves. Matching gloves covered her hands, and a thick veil hung from a small blue hat secured with a pearl-headed pin. Her clothes looked old-fashioned, but not costume-like. The dress was beautifully made, with tiny covered buttons running from her throat to her waist. The veil completely covered her face. I assumed she was an older relative from out of town. I noticed how close she stood to Gordon. Her shoulder was almost touching his, although Gordon seemed unaware that anyone was beside him. He continued speaking with two former classmates, occasionally shifting his weight or turning his body, while the woman remained perfectly still. When Gordon moved, she moved with him. She never appeared to take a step. One moment she stood beside his left shoulder, and after he crossed the room, she was beside him again. I watched for several minutes before approaching. "Hello, ma'am. Could I help you find the family?" I asked. The woman did not respond. Gordon glanced at me and smiled. "Everything all right?" I looked from him to the woman. She stood inches away from him, her veiled face angled slightly in my direction. He turned toward the space beside him and then looked back at me. "Know who?" I thought he was joking. I described the lady in the blue dress, her gloves, and the veil. Gordon's smile faded. He told me nobody was standing beside him. A few nearby guests heard our conversation and looked over. None of them seemed to see the woman. I became embarrassed and blamed the long day. The next time I looked toward Gordon, the woman was gone. Several days later, the photographer delivered the pictures from the visitation. One picture showed Gordon standing with two friends near the back of the chapel. Beside him was a blue blur. It wasn't shaped clearly enough to resemble a person. It looked like a vertical patch of blue light stretching from the floor to just above Gordon's shoulder. The photographer apologized and said the flash must have reflected off something nearby. 11 days later, Gordon died from a ruptured aneurysm. He had opened the hardware store that morning, spoken with several customers, and complained only of a mild headache before collapsing behind the register. The funeral was held at the same funeral home. I looked for the woman in blue throughout the service, but she never appeared. For a while, I thought about the blue blur in the photograph. I wondered whether the woman had somehow been connected to Gordon's death, but the idea sounded ridiculous, even to me. 6 years passed before I saw her again. She appeared at the funeral of a local pastor. I was adjusting a floral arrangement when I noticed the blue veil. The woman stood beside Denise, a retired librarian who had attended the pastor's church for most of her life. Denise turned several times to greet friends, but she never acknowledged the woman standing next to her. I walked toward them. The closer I came, the colder the room felt. The temperature did not drop everywhere. It seemed confined to the small space around the woman. I also noticed a smell that didn't match any of the flowers in the chapel. It reminded me of roses left outside in heavy rain. Sweet, damp, and beginning to decay. A relative took a photograph while we were speaking. In the picture, Denise smiled politely at the camera while I stared toward the empty space beside her. Between us was a thin streak of blue light. Denise died 4 days later. She slipped on the basement stairs at home and suffered a fatal head injury. Her daughter found her that evening. Almost 3 years passed before the woman returned. She appeared during the visitation of a former city clerk. This time, she stood beside a man named Thomas, who had recently retired from the post office. Thomas looked healthy. He and his wife had just celebrated their 40th anniversary, and they were planning a long road trip for the following spring. When I saw the blue dress beside him, panic overwhelmed me. I pulled Thomas away from the other guests and asked him whether he had experienced any chest pain, dizziness, or unusual symptoms. He laughed and told me he felt fine. I insisted that he make a doctor's appointment. I also warned him not to drive alone and suggested that he remain with family for the next several days. 8 days after seeing the woman, a gas line in their home ruptured during the night. Thomas died from the fumes before anyone realized what had happened. His wife survived because she had fallen asleep in the living room with a window partially open. Years passed without another sighting. Eventually, I began to wonder whether I would ever see her again. Then we held a service for a woman named Evelyn. Evelyn had lived across the street from my family when I was a child and used to babysit me quite often. Nearly everyone I knew attended her funeral. My mother sat near the front with 2 longtime friends while I moved through the room assisting guests. About 20 minutes before the service began, I saw the blue veil. Several people stood nearby, including my mother's neighbor, one of Evelyn's nephews, and a former coworker from the funeral home. I shifted to get a clearer view. The woman moved too. I stepped toward the hallway. She followed. I crossed to the opposite side of the room. Again, she moved with me. That was when I realized she was not standing beside anyone else. She was standing beside me. I felt so lightheaded that I had to steady myself against the wall. The woman's veiled face turned toward me, and then she walked away. It was the first time I had ever seen her take an actual step. Her heels made no sound against the floor as she entered the hallway leading toward the private family rooms. I followed her. The hallway was empty except for the woman in blue standing near a closed door. I asked her if I was going to die. She didn't respond. I asked whether she had caused Gordon, Denise, and Thomas to die. I moved closer and demanded to know what she wanted from me. The woman slowly tilted her head. Before I could stop myself, I reached for the veil. The fabric felt cold and damp between my fingers. I lifted it and gasped when I saw that the face underneath belonged to me. It was my face, exactly as it looked that morning, down to the small scar beneath my chin and the shade of lipstick I had applied before work. Only the expression was different. The woman was smiling, and I was not. I dropped the veil and stumbled backward. A coworker entered the hallway and asked whether I was feeling ill. By the time I turned back around, the woman was gone. I left Evelyn's service early and spent the afternoon at my mother's house. I told her I'd become sick at work, but I never explained what I had seen. The next morning, I checked the photos from the funeral. In one picture, a dark blue haze covered the right side of my body. It spread from the floor to my shoulder, overlapping my dress and one of my hands. Everyone I showed it to blamed a camera malfunction, but I could see something inside it. A second figure stood within the blue distortion, positioned so perfectly over my body that our outlines nearly matched. Near my shoulder, the faint suggestion of a face appeared beneath a veil. The features were mine. I resigned from the funeral home less than a month later. Initially, I assumed the woman had marked me for death. Months passed, then a year, and I remained alive. I began to wonder whether standing beside me had meant something different. Maybe the woman had not come to announce my death. Several years after I left the funeral home, the photographer who had worked many, but not all, of our services sent me an image from a recent funeral. He asked whether I could explain a strange blue distortion near one of the guests. The photograph showed a group of mourners standing near the chapel entrance. Beside an older woman was an irregular patch of blue light. I could make out the outline of a dress, a veiled head, and one gloved hand resting near the woman's shoulder. Beneath the veil was my face. The older woman died 9 days later. As far as I know, she still appears at funerals from time to time, and now she wears my face. So what do you think the woman in blue was? Was she a death omen, a spirit, or maybe something directly connected to the coordinator? Let me know your theory in the comments. As always, thanks for spending the night with me, and if you love spooky stories, be sure to follow for more Midnight Confessions.
The person that sent me this story called it Weird Sister Story. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi. I've been watching your stories on Instagram and TikTok lately and thought that I'd join in and share this little story of mine. Me and my sister have a 5-year age gap. When my sister was born, I became obsessed with her, as any 5-year-old would do with literally anything. When we brought her home from the hospital, I would always want to hold her and be in the same room as her in general. I was 5, so I still slept in the same room as my parents. Not just because I was a toddler, but also because my newborn baby sister also slept in their room, of course, so I just wanted to be close to her. One night, I was sleeping with my... Side note, I never liked babies. When I was younger, I never liked babies, and I remember I was so mad because I had a baby cousin that was born, and my best friend cousin at the time, who was only a year younger than me, we used to play all the time. And as soon as that new baby cousin was born, she just wanted to play with the baby. And I was like, oh, I just want to play with you. I was never into anybody else not into babies as a child, little girl. Okay, let's get back to the stories. One night I was sleeping with my parents, and it was maybe 2 to 3 a.m. I can't really remember. We were lined up, my dad on the left, my mom in the middle, and me on the right side, and my baby sister also on the right side of the bed in her crib, maybe 5 feet away. I have ADHD, so from a young age, I got easily overstimulated, so I had to sleep on the end so that I could breathe. And yes, this has relevance to the story. I remember waking up, at least I think I woke up, and the room was kind of in a mist of dust. It was almost like I was in an old black and white movie. I looked around and everything seemed normal. I looked over at my sister's crib, and that's what was off. A woman was standing over my baby sister, not making any noise, just staring. She was giving very The Ring type of woman, long black hair covering her face and a pale white nightgown. I was rightfully worried, and I tried to roll over to wake up my mom, but I was having sleep paralysis. My body wouldn't move. The woman stopped staring at my sister and turned her attention towards me. She looked at me for what felt like forever, and then she slowly looked down at my sister and picked her up. I really freaked out, but I still couldn't move or even make a noise. The woman just looked at my sister in her arms. I think she was rocking her. Okay, maybe we're a good, nice ghost. Then she looked back up at me and walked towards me, placing my little sister in my arms and patting her on the head. Then she looked at me and waved. I blinked and the woman was gone. The dust was also gone. It was back to a dark room with the moon slightly peeking through the blinds. I could move and speak again. I thought it was a bad nightmare, but I looked down and my baby sister was in my arms just like she was when the woman placed her down on me, and she was fast asleep. I was very tired, so I just went back to sleep. I made sure I had a good hold on her so she wouldn't fall, of course. And the next day, my mom yelled at me asking why I got my sister out of her crib in the middle of the night. I was too scared to tell her about the dream I had, so I just said that I got lonely and wanted to cuddle her. It's been a little over 12 years since then, and the only people I've ever told was my sister, when she was old enough to comprehend what I was talking about, and my aunt, who said it could have been an old family member coming to see my baby sister after she was born, which I consider to this day because the woman was so gentle with my sister, not malicious. I've never seen the woman in any other dreams, and I've yet to experience sleep paralysis again. It may seem unrealistic for me to remember such a dream at a young age, but this has really stuck with me. I always wonder why everything happened the way that it did. 12 years later, and me and my sister still have the best relationship. The end! First of all, of course it stuck with you because when you have very high emotions of something, the emotion makes it stick in your brain and in your body more. Second of all, I think it's crazy that she looked like the Ring lady, long black hair, white nightgown situation, but she actually wasn't scary. And because it does seem like she was a family member coming to see, an ancestor coming to see the baby after it was born. Not sure why they felt the need to pick the fucking baby up and put it on your chest so that you got in trouble. maybe they felt that the baby needed to be held or something. I don't know, but you didn't say the baby was crying. If the baby had been crying and upset or sick or something, I could see why an ancestor or past relative would want to pick the baby up and give it to you so that you could help, or give it to mom or something like that. But if the baby was just sleeping, I don't know why the fucking ghost needed to pick it up, but whatever. Anyway, I think it's crazy that she looked like the ring lady with the long black hair and the white nightgown, but she was actually not a mean, malicious entity. And we've actually talked about this in our community, and we think that the reason that so many spirits show up as woman, long black hair, white nightgown, is maybe the black hair and the white nightgown is the easiest to manifest, because it does take energy for them to physically manifest. So maybe that's the reason. But even if that's the reason, it's still fucking scary. I'm sorry. When you see a ghost with a long white nightgown and long fucking black hair, it's still scary. Did it feel scary? Because you didn't really say, like, when she was giving you the baby, did you feel like, oh, okay, she's giving me the baby and it's okay? Or did you feel like, oh my God, she's coming closer to me? Either way, definitely a relative. Great story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Welcome to the Toxic Tea Party, where crash out is welcome and encouraged. Crash outs, what is the most insane thing that you've done? Sent hardcore game porn to his house every month for a year. Toys Magazine's video, where he lived with his very religious homophobic grandparents. The best 371 pounds I ever spent. He needed to go to church and had people pray away the gay demon. He then had to go to a camp. I was unmedicated, hopefully unmedicated stays in the past tense, and was just raw dogging life. I'd done so much. He wanted to play games with me. You want to be funny, bitch? We're gonna be hilarious. My ex was military. He bucked at me like he was gonna hit me. I broke his nose with a pink dildo. He then had to explain to his higher ups why and how his nose was broken. I hope he also told them the color. Put a used dildo in his dresser for the girl that he cheated on me with Divine. They're married now, and she cheated with my friend and had the friend's babies. My ex is raising another man's kids and has no idea. It'd be a level up if you told him. Also, what's with all the toys today? We're going crazy with these dildos. He cheated on me while I was 6 weeks pregnant. I terminated the pregnancy and broke up with him. I also called in a complaint about his pit bull and his apartment, made him get rid of it. I told him that I knew a guy that would get him. Little did he know it was my cousin. Now I have his dog. The dog, but not the baby. Not me, but my aunt found out that my uncle was cheating on her and leaving her for a 304. So she drove the car through the front of his ophthalmology office. She managed to trap him behind his massive L-shaped desk, but the desk didn't break. She backed the van up and hit the desk again. This is why you need to know who you're fucking with. They both survived, and she spent 30 days in a court-mandated psych ward. This was not psychosis. She knew exactly what the fuck she was doing. Your Honor, you're not being a girl's girl. I found out that he was cheating on me. I contacted the other woman and told her that this motherfucker had been married since 2017. She had no idea. I never confronted him. Instead, I planned the nicest birthday party, invited all of our friends and his entire family, got the microphone and stopped the music and said, all right, everyone, let's start singing. The cake is coming. The cake was the woman that he had been cheating on me with while their messages and photos were projected on the wall. She gave me everything. The room went dead silent. Everyone was in complete shock because to them, he was Mr. Perfect. The nicest guy, the perfect husband. Turns out that he was just really good at pretending. Aren't they? Oh, she and I are still friends and even grab a margarita together every now and then. I bet his birthday wish was to get the fuck up out of there, huh? Not me, but my mom cut his pinky off and faked her death for a month. This one was wild straight out the gate. Would sneak into his house or work and move things or leave hidden messages to make him think that he was crazy. He checked himself into a psych ward and she came out of hiding, visited him, and then told him it was her all along and that no one would believe him because he was in a psych ward. That is dedication. You faked your death? Sorry, that one wins. Do you know how much effort it takes to put into faking your own fucking death? I mean, I don't know personally, but it seems like a lot. If there was an award, you'd win it. I pewed him. It's not funny, but it is a little bit. She didn't say that he is no longer with us. I'm sure he's fine. Maybe it was like in the foot or something. We were fighting and breaking up. He told me he wanted my engagement ring back, so I swallowed it. The look on his face was fucking priceless. I bet that felt good coming out. He cheated on me, so I called off the wedding. He had already paid for half of the castle. The castle? So I kept the booking, donated all of his stuff to charity, and now I'm just waiting to throw the biggest 30th birthday party there. Was the caterer paid too? Or is it like a BYOB situation? I'm on my way. Found out that he was paying for OF, changed the email to his mother's and the recovery number to his father's. Dated his boss. Let me clarify, he was the new guy on the force. I dated his sergeant, told him all the terrible things that I endured. When I tell you that man got the worst shift, worst partners, worst calls for 8 months without knowing until I showed up as a +1. He transferred to another location, so I started dating his new sergeant for 6 months. Best use of my singlehood ever. Tell me what the craziest shit that you've ever done is, except for if the statute of limitations is not up. If it isn't, send it to my inbox because I do have a series of anonymous petty events that I would love to bring back.
So apparently there's a secret society in Vegas and it's quite demonic. I am back with another spooky story. It's been so long, I know. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Henry. Henry says, I don't know if you'll believe me, and honestly, I don't expect you to. Henry asks to remain anonymous, as he moved away years ago and he would never want anyone connected to that chapter of his life finding him. So Henry moved to Vegas when he was 22. And like everyone else, he had told himself that he's chasing his dreams. He wanted to be rich, not just comfortable, but he wanted private jets, penthouses, designer clothes, the type of money that made people listen when you walk into a room. And according to Henry, Vegas sells you that fantasy. Everywhere you look, somebody's driving a Lamborghini, wearing a Rolex, throwing money around like it grows on trees. So Henry figures if everyone else can become successful there, why couldn't he? At first, everything was going exactly how he'd imagined. Vegas is all about networking. He met a few people at a rooftop party. Those people always seem to know someone important. Investors, casino executives, tech founders, real estate moguls would all just be connected to these people. Henry says the strange part is that none of them seemed to have actual jobs. They had these job titles, but they were never really seen working. They would disappear for weeks and come back somehow even richer. One night, a guy that Henry had gotten close to asked him a question. He asked him, how badly do you want the life you keep talking about? Henry told him, more than anything. And he says he still remembers till this day that this guy told him, be careful what you wish for, because some people actually mean that. A few weeks later, that same guy invited Henry to a private gathering outside of the city. Now, there were no phones allowed. He couldn't bring a +1. He really wasn't even allowed to ask many questions. Henry said he almost didn't go, and he wishes he hadn't. So the property was hidden in the desert behind these massive gates. There were expensive cars everywhere, but nobody was taking pictures. Nobody was drinking. It didn't feel like a party. Everyone was wearing black. No name, it was just initials. Inside the house, every mirror was covered. The windows were blocked. There were symbols everywhere, symbols that he had never seen before. Someone handed him a black robe and said, tonight is about commitment. Henry says he remembers asking what everyone did for a living, and one woman looked at him and laughed and said, you're still thinking too small. So around midnight, everyone gathers in one room. And at this point, Henry's thinking this is starting to feel normal. Maybe this is what rich people do. But midnight comes around. Everybody's in one room. There's candles. People start chanting. The lights ran out. Somebody began reading random names. Now, these are not celebrities' names. They're random, regular people's names. And everyone around him repeated the same sentence after every name. Everything has a price. Henry remembers feeling sick. Told himself it was probably some weird billionaire networking ritual, who knows. At this point, Henry is full on ignoring his gut. Afterwards, they pulled him aside. The man who invited him said that he had been chosen. He told him that opportunities would start finding him. Money, influence, success, but only if he proves he could let go of the person that he used to be. He asked him another question. If your mother stood between you and the life you've always wanted, what are you choosing, her or your future? I'm gonna just use your comment for part 2 before y'all start screaming at me. So the guy asks Henry, if your mother stood between you and the life you've always wanted, would you choose her or your future? Henry got angry. Henry's like, what kind of question is that? The guy didn't say anything else. He didn't answer him. He just smiled and walked away. The next morning, Henry woke up back in his apartment with no recollection of actually leaving the party. There's a whole 2 hours that night that's like blocked from his memory. And it's strange because like he said, there wasn't much drinking happening. So the next day, on his kitchen counter, he found an envelope containing $25,000 cash. There was no note attached to it, no explanation. For a second, Henry is convincing himself that maybe none of it had happened. So he calls up his friend and he tells him about the money. And the friend asks him, well, do you accept the money or not? And Henry says if they sweeten the deal, then he might just accept the offer. And later that day, another $25,000 in cash was delivered to him. How can Henry deny such a sweet deal? He just got $50,000 that he didn't do anything for. Then about 3 days later, his phone rang. It was his younger sister. She was crying. Well, their dad had just suffered a massive stroke during the night. Henry froze. He's like, maybe it's a coincidence. Like, it had to be. First of all, the guy said something about his mother, not his dad, so Had to be a coincidence, right? But over the next year, he would notice something really dark. Every time he accepted another invitation, something good happened for him. And then something terrible happened to someone he loved. He landed his dream job. His cousin suddenly in a car accident. He closed the biggest business deal of his life. His best friend was diagnosed with cancer. It seemed like every success came with another funeral, another hospital room, another goodbye. It got to the point where Henry stopped sleeping. He's making all this money and has no one in his corner. He stopped celebrating entirely and told that man that he was done. And the man seemed more disappointed in him than angry. The man expressed to him that he could do so much more. He could take over the world. And then the man told him, "We never forced you to say yes." After that, they let him walk away. However, everything disappeared. That dream job, gone. Business deal fell through. The invitations stopped. Within months, he lost his apartment and nearly everything he worked for. He almost thought about going back, but for the first time at that point in over a year, nobody in his family or anybody that he was close to got hurt. And sometimes he doesn't know if it's his brain playing tricks on him, trying to convince him to go back. Sometimes he thinks, well, maybe it was just all a coincidence. But one thing that he knows for sure about Vegas, not every door opens because it's meant for you. Some doors only exist to see if you're willing to trade pieces of yourself for everything you've ever wanted. But if somebody approaches you with the offer of giving you everything you've ever wanted, ask yourself, why would they be willing to give it away? That was pretty much it for that story. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am so back, you guys, with the spooky story. I really missed y'all. Like I say at the end of all of my videos, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
Would you explore a haunted cemetery? I am on a personal ghost story kick right now, and another horrifying experience that I had while I was simultaneously being haunted by whatever I unlocked while playing a Ouija board was going to a haunted cemetery called Ball Cemetery in Nebraska. If you are from the urban area, then you know exactly what I'm talking about and where I am talking about, especially if you're in like the 23 and on age range, because now I think Ball Cemetery is like completely locked up and there's no trespassing everywhere, and it's very hard to get in because of how much people would visit. Anyways, I was late to the game. I never snuck out when I was in high school. I never did anything when I was in high school. So I never experienced peak Ball Cemetery. But the summer of 2022, my friends somehow got me to go to Ball Cemetery with them, or at least attempt to go to Ball Cemetery with them, after we had watched Sinister 2. One of the scariest horror movies, I think, that is still out. Anyways, we all piled into this red pickup truck and drove out to Ball Cemetery, which is about 25 minutes outside of where I live. In order to get onto the property itself, you have to trespass and sneak on. I know that's not a good thing to do, but what's done is done, and we actually shut off the lights to the truck in order to pass by the house so the people who owned the cemetery wouldn't see our truck. I had this sinking feeling the entire time. I have heard stories about Ball Cemetery. There is a game that you play at Ball Cemetery called Four Corners, where you touch every corner of the cemetery and something happens. I don't know. This was after I played with the Ouija board, and I just did not mess with spiritual things like that. I didn't mess with trying to anger the supernatural at that point, because I had my fair share of experiences and I did not want anything following me home. But we get there and it is entirely padlocked. There is barbed wire on the top of the fences, so you can't even climb or scale them. If you are an Omaha OG, then you know that the sign is super scary looking. And just being there is pretty terrifying, especially at night. But anyways, there is a huge tree that is within the fence line of the cemetery itself. And from the moment we got there, I was just fixated on this tree. And I felt like someone was watching us from behind the tree from inside of the fence line. Like I said, it was padlocked. There are cameras. There's no trespassing signs. You name it, they got it. You're not getting in. And my friends very shortly figured that out after, number one, I wouldn't get out of the truck because I was so scared that there was someone waiting for us behind the tree. And number two, I'm not getting out of the truck, period. I'm not going in the cemetery. It was even a gift that I went out with them. And as they were coming back into the truck that is parked backwards towards the tree, so I'm looking out the back window at this oak tree, like my eyes are burning because I've just been watching it the entire time and not blinking. I wish you guys could see like my chicken skin right now, because as they're walking back, I see something move from behind the tree. And the moment my friends get in the truck, I'm like, drive. You need to drive right now. There's someone inside the cemetery. And long story short, we drive home. Everybody's like super skeptical and everybody thinks I'm crazy because I was talking about this thing that was behind the tree and I was just like freaking out. I get back to my parents' house and every freaking time that I try to be brave and walk in the dark, something happens. I distinctly remember I had walked to my parents' room to get the dogs that I normally sleep with. And as I'm walking through the hallway into the kitchen, I seriously have no idea how to explain this. All of the silverware and the dishware that had been in the sink that day rattled as if somebody like picked up a handful of them and dropped them in the sink. And hearing silverware clatter in the middle of the night, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, in the dark, sent me sprinting down the hallway. I think I seriously just like shut the door, turned the light on, and went to bed with the lights on that night. And I never went back. I had plenty of people in high school that had gone to the cemetery before it was like locked up like that. And a lot of them had their own stories of paranormal happenings that had occurred in the cemetery itself. But like always, I just scared myself by even talking about it. So that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for those stories.
Something weird is going on at Taco Bell. And there are people who are reporting having these very strange, creepy experiences at Taco Bells across America. Now, there was this man named Jose. Jose said that him and a group of friends, they had went to this convention in El Paso. They were traveling down Interstate 20, headed towards Dallas, Texas. And he said they had been driving for a little over an hour when they started to get hungry. And so they began looking for somewhere to stop to get some food. We said they seen an exit for a nearby town, and they figured maybe this town has some restaurants. So they turn off the interstate, and they start going down this back road. Well, it was just nothing but cornfields. But after about 5 minutes of driving, they were amazed because they see a sign for Taco Bell. And there is this brand new Taco Bell right in the middle of a bunch of cornfields. And it looked like it was completely new construction. So they pulled into the parking lot, which was freshly striped. And this building couldn't have been not even, a few weeks old. It looked very, very new. So they park their vehicle and they get out of the car and they go to the front door. We said as soon as they open the door and they go inside, they notice all of these people sitting down. And they all get out of their chair and they go up to Jose and his friends. And they start saying to him, welcome, welcome, and they started to greet him. And they knew all of their names. And Jose and his friends, they're confused because they're like, we've never been to this part of town. No one should know who we are. But he said everyone at this restaurant was saying hi to them and knew their names one by one. So he said they go up to the counter and there were several employees working and they, looked just immaculate. He said they were almost glowing, like they were well groomed. They had on these new uniforms and they greeted them and they knew their names as well. And they said, Jose, welcome to Taco Bell. We're so glad you came here. And he said it was almost like going to a family reunion. So he said he put in his order and eventually they got their food and they sat down. After about 10 minutes, they're sitting there eating. And Jose kind of starts looking around at these people in the restaurant. And he said he noticed that they seemed to be almost robotic. They were continuously doing the same thing over and over again. And he also noticed that the employees behind the counter, the same thing. There would be a guy, he would walk from the counter all the way to the back line. And then he would walk back again. And he would pick up a tray. And then he would set it down. And he said, it felt like everything was sort of planned out. And he couldn't help but notice that everyone had a smile on their face. Everyone was happy. Everyone seemed so excited. But then they started to hear this sound coming from the back of the restaurant. And he said one of the employees started saying, hello, welcome to Taco Bell. Hello, welcome to Taco Bell. Hello, welcome to Taco Bell. Like he was stuck on repeat or like he was going haywire. And he said he just kind of was moving back and forth erratically. So after they got done eating, they hurry up and left and they go back out to the car. But it was the weirdest thing. Jose looks around and he said there wasn't a single car in the parking lot besides their vehicle. So he couldn't figure out where all these people had come from because they were out in the middle of nowhere. So they get in their car, they leave, and they make it to Dallas. Well, a couple days later, they end up heading back from Dallas to El Paso. And he said they decided to stop at this same Taco Bell. So they pull off the interstate and they go down this road. But when they get to the location of where this Taco Bell was, it wasn't there. Said it was just a cornfield. There were no Taco Bells around for miles. And still to this day, he has not been able to find that restaurant. So have you ever had a creepy or strange encounter at a restaurant like Taco Bell?
Do you believe that creatures exist? And by creatures, I mean things that are not normal, human, even animals. Spooky story time. Someone sent me the story, and she says that this happened when she was about 16 years old. She lives in a small town. It was about 10 p.m. and her and 3 other friends walked to this high school that she did not attend to. She attended a different high school, but they were bored. They wanted to go roam around, and they did. So they get to the campus, they're having fun, they're messing around, they're laughing, they're joking, they're playing. And they are sitting in the back of the school, and there is a street that kind of runs near it. There isn't anything significant there. There's a few houses, there are some street lights, but they're kind of closer to where the homes are, not so close to the end of the street where they are. Again, they're laughing, they're playing, they're messing around, and one of them turns and happens to look down that specific street, and they see a shadow of something walking towards them. In that same moment, she tells the other friends what she sees. They all look, and she says that instantly they felt a presence of something or someone watching them, something watching them. So they're all looking at this thing that's walking towards them, and they don't know what it is because it looks like it has more than just 2 arms. It is walking on 2 legs, but the shadow that it is creating is not normal. She says that it's nothing like she's ever seen before, no animal that she's ever seen before, and everyone in the group was flabbergasted. They were freaking out. Naturally, they're 16 years old. They start yelling. They run to the front part of the school, and they're kind of like hiding out. They're trying to be quiet because the way home is towards that specific street where they saw this thing. So now they're quiet. They're trying to peek around the corner to see if they see anything, and they do. They see an 8-year-old little girl walking a very small dog. So they come out and they feel relieved. They're telling the little girl, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry if we scared you. We were scared. We thought we saw something." And this little girl is not acknowledging them. She's not looking at them. She's literally just walking right past them, not moving, not blinking. The way that she's walking, it's kind of not human-like either. What the writer also mentioned was that this dog that was with her was also not acknowledging them either. Normally, when there's a dog and they see some random people, the dog is like barking or panting or something. No, they were literally just looking straight, both of them just walking. Again, the group freaks out. They run back towards that street to get their butts home, and they actually sit down to talk about what they saw, and they realize that it was almost midnight and that there was no way or reason why an 8-year-old little girl would be walking by herself completely. Now, to this day, the writer obviously does not know what that creature looking like thing was and if it morphed into that 8-year-old looking little girl. What do you guys think? Do you think it was a shadow, a creature of the night? Do you think the little girl was an actual 8-year-old little girl walking her little dog almost at midnight? Let me know what you guys think. And also, if you guys have a spooky story that you'd like for me to read, please make sure that you send it via DM or email because I'd love to read it. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
Sarah loves listening to true crime podcasts when she's walking home from work. But that was until one night she stumbled across a podcast about herself. Now, she had already listened to her favorite podcast this week, and they only put out 1 episode per week. So she went hunting for a new one. Thankfully, she found one, and she was super excited, so she hit play. The narrator starts talking about a small town, the kind of place where mom and pop shops line all of the streets, the kind where everyone knows each other, but the residents didn't know that they were about to be rocked by a horrible crime. Sarah stopped at the traffic light. There was a light rain on the floor, and she was waiting for the walk sign to turn on. That's when a black SUV drove straight past her, and it almost like splashed water on her. The narrator continues to say that everything changed that one September chilly evening for one college student. She had finished her shift at the local store, and she was walking back home, but she never made it there. At this point, Sarah's thinking like, young student, local store, like this is all hitting really close to home. Because she did attend part-time at Franklin Community College, and she actually did work at the convenience store. And of course, she was walking home. The podcast continues to say that her boyfriend reported her missing the following day, and thus a search party was sent out. And after a day or two, they found something. A knot started to form in Sarah's stomach. She was anticipating that they were going to find a body, but what they found was much worse. Washed up on the shore of Worthington Lake was a pair of red, size 9 Converse sneakers. At this point, Sarah stopped dead in her tracks and looked down at her shoes. She was wearing size 9 red Converse sneakers. At this point, Sarah's heart started to pound, but that's when she noticed it. There was a rumbling sound from an SUV that was turning left at the intersection, and she realized it was the same one from before. And she started to think, maybe it's following me. But the car drove past and disappeared into the darkness. This entire time, Sarah's trying to tell herself, like, you need to get a grip. Like, so many people own Converse. Size 9 is a very common size for women. So, like, let's not freak out. This is all just a big coincidence. Then the narrator proceeded, saying that it took a few weeks for the analysis to come back. But those Converse sneakers did belong to Sarah Campbell. The blood drained from her face, because her name was Sarah Campbell. She was stuck, frozen there for a second, but she had to force herself to move, because she needed to get home. The narrator said that the search through the lake came up empty, and it's hard to solve a crime when there's no body. But a witness finally came forward. Someone says that they seen a black SUV with darkened windows parked by the lake around 2 a.m. So at this point, Sarah is in a full-blown panic, so she is looking around everywhere to see where this witness could be. But she's not seeing anything. There is no one on the street, there is no cars, and all of the shops are closed. There were 6 SUVs in the city that matched that exact description, but one of them belonged to John Kelly, a registered sex offender in the area. At that exact moment, Sarah heard the rev of an engine, so she turned around, and suddenly there was headlights there, pointed directly at her, and they were coming from a black SUV, the same one she's been seeing all night. John Kelly was not just a registered sex offender. He also had assaulted a woman that looked relatively similar to Sarah. So at this point, Sarah took off running, but the car was following slowly behind her. It was almost like it was taunting her a little bit, like it knew it could catch her at any moment. As Sarah's running, finally she turns onto her street. She runs up to her door, pulls out her keys, throws open the door, and locks it behind herself. But she wasn't in the clear just yet, because her boyfriend Gabe was not home at the time, and now she knows that this person that's been following her knows where she lives. So she immediately calls Gabe, and he says he's about 5 minutes away, to lock the doors and he'll be there soon. So she made her way to the bathroom, sat down, grabbed some tissue so that way she could blow her nose. That's when she heard a click. It was the sound of her phone unlocking, and she looked, and the podcast started playing. The narrator then says, "What do you think happened to Sarah?" And a voice responded saying, "Well, she'd always told me that she wanted to run away." Sarah's heart drops, because she realized that it's Gabe's voice responding to the narrator. So the narrator asks, "She did? Why?" He then says she wasn't happy with her grades or her job or her parents, and that one day she wanted just to run away to another state and live a completely new life. But at this point, Sarah is frozen, staring at herself in the mirror, listening to this, because Gabe is lying. She never said that. Gabe then says, that was really hurtful to me as her boyfriend, because I thought we were going to get married one day, but apparently she didn't think the same. At this point, Sarah's heart is pounding like in her ears. She cannot think straight. So the narrator asks, so do you think she just skipped town and now she's off living some happy life somewhere? And there's a pause. And then Gabe says, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. The narrator then says, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Suddenly, Sarah hears the front door creak open. And it's Gabe's voice saying, Sarah, I'm back. At this point, Sarah backs away from the door because she knows that somehow Gabe is tied to all of this. Then she hears again, Sarah, where are you? Immediately, she turns toward the window, opens it up, and pushes out the screen. One leg over the other, she hops out, and she runs as fast and as far as she possibly can. Honestly, thank God she got away, because no, absolutely not. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this story. Throw a heart on the video if you did, and give me a follow because I tell stories like this all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
The door open and you swore somebody was calling from the hallway, but everyone's fast asleep and you know that there's nobody there. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. Well, in this next story, this person had that exactly happen to them. However, there was more to the story than just somebody staring from the darkness. So for privacy reasons, I'll be changing people's names. It's that she understood completely where Cynthia was coming from. She understood her depression. She understood her anxiety, that the world was caving in on her. She was losing everything dear to her. So Melissa decided to stay with Cynthia for a few days just to be there for her physically, not just verbally or through text or stopping by. A state that Cynthia did convey to Melissa that she was hearing things and movements in her home, but she just kept dismissing it because she thought it was just her anxiety or depression and it's just causing her mind to run wild. Melissa says that she's not one to keep her door open while she was sleeping, but Cynthia felt safer with the door open. Meaning, like, if something happens, she can just run out the door. Now, to Melissa, this made no sense. How do you feel safer with the door open? Wouldn't you feel safer with the door closed? And you can then get yourself together to run out? But she didn't question her. She didn't push anything. She just let Cynthia be. That even though she's not a huge believer, she does believe in praying before going to sleep just to calm you down, ease your mind and your spirit. So she suggested to Cynthia, let's pray before we go to bed. And as they prayed, she could feel that Cynthia relaxed a little bit and was able to fall asleep a lot faster than she usually did over the phone with Melissa. Melissa says that over the phone, she would take hours to fall asleep, just talking and talking and talking about random things. And of course, Melissa not caring because she understood what she was going through in a personal level, she just let her ramble on for hours at a time. But this time, since Melissa was there, she felt Cynthia even more at ease. And after the prayer, she was like a baby, fell asleep right away. Side note, these two women were alone in this house by themselves. No one else. Just keep that in mind. It states that in the middle of the night, hours later after the prayer, she started to hear Cynthia calling her, and she woke up. And of course, you know, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you can see in the darkness of your room compared to the hallway because the moonlight was coming in through the window. So she was able to see the difference between the two. Now, as she's trying to get herself up, she can hear Cynthia frantically calling her from the hallway to come help her. And of course, Melissa's like, give me a second, Cynthia, I'm coming. And the only thing that Melissa can think of is something must have happened while I was sleeping and she couldn't do something by herself and now she needs me. And as she's about to get up off the bed, all of a sudden she felt a hand grab her by her arm. And she turned over and it was Cynthia. Doesn't know what to do. She decides to just calm down and she's staring at Cynthia. Now Cynthia has her eyes closed. She is fast asleep but holding on to Melissa. And she doesn't understand, like, how is Cynthia still sleeping, even snoring now at this point, and is holding me so tight. So as she's trying to get Cynthia off of her arm, she can hear Cynthia call her from the hallway. And the voice is getting closer and closer and closer. At that point, she couldn't handle it. She decided to wake up Cynthia. And of course, Cynthia wakes up and she's like, what's going on? And she says, you are calling me from the hallway. And she's like, how is it possible that I'm calling you from the hallway? I am right here with you. And she's like, no, you are calling me from the hallway. I am not leaving this room. I am not going out there. You need to turn on a light or something, but I am going nowhere near that door. And as she's saying, I'm going nowhere near that door, that is when they heard a laugh from the hallway in the darkness. And that's when Cynthia decided to look over into the hallway. And that's when she said she saw a pair of red eyes staring right back into the room. Said that Cynthia froze in time, could not move. She feels like Cynthia stopped breathing for a second. And that's when Melissa grew the courage, or what we say, the BALLS, and shut the door and locked it. It's that she and Cynthia did not sleep the rest of the night, and they did seek some type of help, not just for the house, but for Cynthia, because Melissa truly believes that her depression and anxiety had caused something more sinister into her life. Now, what do you guys think that was? And if you have any tips on what else they should do, please leave it in the comments.
The experience that made me believe in the paranormal. Like I said, I have been on a paranormal story kick, and specifically my own personal story. Just for some background context, I have lived in a multi-generational household pretty much my entire life, which basically means that my grandmother has lived with us for as long as I can remember. This time, I want to say I was like 7-ish, and there were only 2 bedrooms on the main floor of the home. My grandmother had the mother-in-law suite / apartment style living in the basement. She had the entire basement to herself. 2 primary bedrooms upstairs, and then my mom had converted our office that had 2 glass French doors into my room. She had created these curtains for me so nobody could see into my room at night, or I couldn't see anything out into the darkness of the living room. I've always been very afraid of the dark. On the weekends, I was notoriously a night owl, and I would watch movies and play video games super duper late into the night. Probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I finally decided that it was time to go to bed. I paused the game I was playing, and right as I was opening Netflix up, I hear 2 very heavy bare feet running across the floor outside of my door. I should say doors. Important to note that a good chunk of my parents' house has old oak floors, so hearing people walk is very distinct on flooring, and it did not sound like anybody that I had heard walk on the floor before. Obviously, I'm frozen in fear, because who the hell is up at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning? I text in my sister and I's group chat with my mom, and I say, is anybody up? I already know the answer, but I just am leaning on the hope that somebody is up and somebody just got hungry in the middle of the night. But I am also close enough to the kitchen where if somebody turns on a light, I can see it come in through my curtains. And B, I didn't hear anybody come back, and I did not see a light come on. I just remember laying awake the rest of the night. The moment the sun came up, I was opening my French doors, running into my mom's room and being like, hey girl, did you get up last night for a snack? She said no. I would wait for my sister to get up and ask, did you get up in the middle of the night to get a snack? She says no. I even asked my grandmother, who is literally never upstairs, did you get up last night to get a cup of water or something or go to mom's room? She says no. From that point on, I don't know what it was. I don't know. I just knew that something was like messing with me. I haven't heard it since, and I hope I never hear it again. Because anybody who's experienced something paranormal and like you hear or see it in front of you, it just leaves you feeling icky. I don't know. All paranormal experiences that I've had make me feel so weird. I think it's because my brain cannot comprehend that it's something actually happening. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Here are more spooky stories that I found in some Reddit comments. Let's go! In my dad's childhood house, he used to see a woman dressed in white carrying a candelabra. As he grew up, he chalked it up to a childhood imagination. Years later, he overheard a woman at his job describing a ghost she saw in her house, a woman dressed in white carrying a candelabra. He asked where she lived, and it was the same house he'd grown up in. I was 19 and living at home. I woke up one night and I saw this huge, it was almost reaching the ceiling, black hooded thing. It was just standing there next to my wardrobe. I froze and stayed in bed, too scared to move. It was there for about 10 seconds before it vanished. I had nightmares for weeks with that thing in it. Fast forward 15 years later, my sister, who has had my old room for years, asked me if I had ever seen anything weird in that bedroom and tells me about the hooded thing that she had seen. I never told anyone about what I saw, especially not my sister, who was only 4 at the time. Phew, okay. So my cousin and I recalled this experience at her grandmother's house that I had blocked out of my mind. Her grandmom was bedridden at the time and the only one living in the house. We were laying in bed watching a show and the bedroom door was cracked. We could hear her grandmom snoring lightly. Her room was only separated from ours by the bathroom. I get sick to my stomach thinking about this next part. We started hearing footsteps in the hall. We immediately thought her grandmom had gotten out of bed, but we could still hear her snoring. The footsteps were slow and heavy, and then got closer. I was truly paralyzed with fear. My cousin sidestepped to the door and quickly closed it with a fully outstretched arm. When we told my aunt the next day, she said, "Yeah, imagine how I felt growing up there." I witnessed this myself. My sister's cat was walking towards the door to go out to the living room. He suddenly stopped, arched his back, fur on end, and hissed at the empty doorway, before walking around 3.5 walls of the room to go out the same doorway. In the same house, I once saw a 6-foot-tall man out of the corner of my eye that I thought was my brother-in-law, when he in fact wasn't home, and it turned out I was alone. Also same house, a small girl ghost had been seen by multiple people, but not by me, and was known to play with my nephew's toys. I was driving to work ready for the graveyard shift in 2016 and caught a red light. There wasn't a single car in sight to cause it to turn red, so I figured it was a timer. I waited for 5 minutes and the light doesn't turn, so I decide I'm just going to drive through it. As I'm moving, the light turns green and shines onto this black tar-covered alligator crawling into the ditch. I watched it move quickly and leave a black trail in the road as it disappeared. I do not live in a state where alligators or crocodiles can live. It was bigger than most of those creatures and moved too fast for it to be either. Me and 2 of my siblings were home alone upstairs and we heard the front door open, so someone went to check outside the door and I checked the porch, but no one was there. We thought it was nothing, so we left it, but once we sat back down, we heard running downstairs in the basement and a child's voice asking, "Is someone here? I'm looking for my mom." My brother ran downstairs and still there was nobody. When I was around 12, my mother and I were sitting in our den alone in the house and both of us heard someone call her name. I just looked at her and said, "Yeah, I heard it too." My mother does tarot reads and she had someone come in who got a read. They get the read and said they were afraid to get this one, and my mother asks why. Turns out that this person had gone to 2 other readers and gotten the same spread each time. That's 3 times in a row where a person got the exact same order of cards from a randomly shuffled deck of 72. Statistically speaking, that is obscenely improbable. Honestly, it sounds like that person really needed to receive that message. My aunt was bad-mouthing my grandmother behind her back one day, and this family heirloom crystal vase that was on the shelf that no one had touched in years just splits down the middle. Ghosts were not happy, apparently. As always, I love these stories. Okay, bye!
Growing up, did you guys ever see that movie called The Boy? Or have you ever heard a sound inside of your house or in your walls that creeped you out and you made you think that you were going crazy? Eventually, you sum it up to the fact that, like, oh, maybe it's just a ghost. Because I'm about to tell you a story that happened to me when I was like 18 years old, and I found out during the end that it was actually way worse than a ghost. Like I said, I was about 18 years old and I was staying at my best friend's house at the time. She lived right next door, and her house always had weird spooky noises, so it was kind of normal for us to hear stuff in the middle of the night. We always had slumber parties growing up, so it was totally normal to hear stuff. But there was this one particular night where I was hearing knocking on the walls, and I was telling her, "Hey, do you hear that?" And at first she didn't hear anything of it, right? She was like, "No, I don't hear anything." And then as time went on, you started to hear the knocking. Like I said, I kind of summed it up to the fact that maybe it was a ghost because it sounded just like... We all know that like demonic things come in threes. Well, I can tell you that what happened that night was way scarier than something demonic. Remember, like throughout the night, we started to mess around and play with it because like I said, we thought we were dealing with a demon. At some point, we literally started knocking back to this thing. And then at some point, it started knocking back to us. So we start freaking out and we're telling each other, "Oh my God, dude, this is like a demon or whatever, and it's toying around with us." So by the time the middle of the night comes around, both of us are like freaked out, but we're also like excited because we're thinking it's a demon or a ghost and they can't hurt you, right? Turns out that wasn't the case. There came a point where me and her, it was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and we were like, okay, we gotta go to bed. And that was until we heard the sound of like a broom, the literal sound of a broom that fell over and flopped on the floor. And of course that woke us both up. So now we're up, we're scared, we're walking around the house. She grabs a kitchen knife, I grab a baseball bat, and we start creeping around the corners of her house. That was about the time I heard someone literally giggle. So I got scared and I just started swinging the bat in the dark, I'm not even gonna lie. And that was when I hit a glass vase that actually woke up her grandmother, who was a very scary person to wake up, but woke up her grandmother, and that is when you heard the sound of something just slammed shut. She realizes that that was the basement window. We go outside, and in the middle of the night, you literally see two people running through the backyard. And that was the moment that we realized that she had two people inside her walls of her house. We don't know what they were doing there. We don't know if they were frogging, but she had two people creeping around the walls in her house. Like I say in a lot of my other videos, guys, there's only one thing scarier than animals and ghosts out in the woods and in certain places, and that's people. Follow for more crazy stories of my life.
Want to get creeped out? Have you ever heard of the Three Kings ritual? I have a story of someone who tried it.
This story, I just want to say, this would probably be me. I already feel bad for whoever tried this if you're comparing them to you. Okay. Sorry. Her name is Elizabeth. It was her 30th birthday. Ooh. She has her house and her husband left for the night, and she had 3 friends over for a big slumber party type.
Fun.
Yeah, that's like a fun little birthday.
But you're already...
Stay at home, don't gotta leave, get drunk. So they're partying.
So this is more people than you're supposed to have.
Yes.
And alcohol is involved.
Oh, and they're partying.
Okay.
Like mad hard.
Oh dear.
They decide to set up the room in which they have their mirrors, chair, fan, all the things in the outside shed, because it's the only room that has no windows and that is completely dark.
Okay. No judgment, but like so far everything is being done wrong.
And like the fan is plugged in with the extension cord from the house to the shed, which hey, that's cool. She's got her bucket of water handy, ready to go. She's got all the things. So the women all set up together and they head inside, and they don't go to sleep. Like they're partying, like they're drinking. But Elizabeth set an alarm, obviously, for 3:30 so that she remembers to get her ass in that chair in the shed. So alarm goes off at 3:30. She makes her way to the shed. Her friends set an alarm also to remember to go get her because they're still partying through this.
Okay, wait, question.
Yeah.
Did you say what her power object is? Or did
I'm
I
getting
not?
there.
Oh, okay.
She makes her way to the shed with her power object, which is an empty bottle of her favorite kind of wine
so
that she had drank. I really respect that.
You do you, boo.
I love it. Elizabeth says that while she's sitting in the chair, girl's got the spins.
Oh no.
And she's like swaying around. And not only that, but she can hear her friends in the house because they left the window open. They could hear her if anything went wrong. But really, she's just hearing them like screaming and singing and stuff.
Oh
is what
God,
she's hearing.
so funny.
So as she's sitting there with the spins, she said that she is like continuously seeing a lot of like little lights is what it looks like little, like little flakes of something shiny in the side. The odd,
like in a mirror?
In her peripheral, she's seeing something like kind of shiny.
Our author Margaret just broke one of the Appalachian rules that she learned as a kid. So growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, there are certain rules that you need to follow. 1, never whistle at night. 2, if you hear someone calling your name from the woods, do not go. Turn the other way. And 3, if you hear someone you love outside your bedroom window at night, do not look. Her grandmother used to always say that last one like it was not a superstition, like she had experienced it firsthand. She would always say, if you look, it knows you can see it. She always thought she meant like coyotes or bears or something, but she doesn't think that anymore. It was 1:47 in the morning. Margaret was laying in her bed, and suddenly she heard something coming from outside her window, and she realized that it was her mom calling out to her. It was soft, and it was calm, and it just said, "Hey, baby." Now her stomach dropped immediately because her mom lives 40 minutes away, so there's no way that she would be out there. But instinctively, she checked her phone. There was no missed calls, no text messages, nothing from her mom. Then it called out again, and it said, "Open the window." It was the same voice and the same tone, but something about it was just wrong. It sounded like it had been flattened out, like somebody trying to do an impression. So at this point, she just stayed still and didn't answer. Then she heard, "Come on, just look at me." She tried to tell herself it was just stress or an auditory hallucination or something other than the superstition that her grandma used to tell her. At this point, the voice shifted slightly. It said, "Why won't you look at me?" Then it said, "You used to always look for monsters under your bed. They're not under there." At that exact moment, she heard a slight scraping against the siding of the house. And that's when she made her mistake. She broke the rule, and she looked. She was standing at the edge of the yard, just past the tree line, wearing her mom's face. But it was wrong. Too tall, shoulders too narrow, arms just a little bit too long. Her head was slightly tilted, almost like it wasn't used to sitting on that neck. But the face was almost perfect. Almost. The smile was stretched back just a little bit too tightly. Margaret noticed that its eyes weren't focused on her, though. They were focused on the reflection in the window. It was almost like she was watching herself and, like, adjusting. When their eyes finally met, the expression changed. There was no anger, there was no rage, it was nothing like that. It was delight. She smiled. Then, in a high, shrill voice, she says, "I got you." Then suddenly, she stepped back into the tree line, not turning around, not facing the other way, literally just stepping back and to the left. But she was still smiling. Immediately, she runs, grabs her phone, and calls her mom. And her mom answered on the second ring. She answered in a, groggy hello, like she had just woken up. So Margaret says, "I think I just had a nightmare." And then there was just silence. So she calls out to her mom, saying, "Mom, are you there?" And there's no answer. Then very quietly, her mom says, "I'm inside." Then it laughed. Not loud. It was very soft, almost like it was trying not to wake someone up. Then the call ended. The house was completely silent. There was no footsteps, no doors opening, no creaking, nothing. Now what scares Margaret the most is that her grandma used to always say, looking is the same thing as opening the door. And Margaret looked.
There's one room in my house that nobody will sleep in anymore. So the story is about the room that's technically supposed to be my room. Before we moved into that house, my dad's side of the family lived in the home. Over the years, we've been told stories by people about things that might have happened in that bedroom. There was even a rumor that one of the neighbors practiced witchcraft. Like, for example, one day there was pig ears that were placed on the windowsill of the bedroom, and it couldn't have easily gotten there. We have tall fences surrounding our house. Before my mom moved into this house, she just had my older brother, he was still newborn, and she asked my grandma if she would bless the house. I guess my grandma was the one that would always pray over the houses and was said to be able to cast things out that were in them. So when she prayed over the house, everybody expected that whatever was in that room was cast out, but I don't think it ever actually left. Which is so interesting because the rest of the house is very comfortable, very normal feeling, peaceful, honestly. And then when you walk inside of the bedroom, it feels very heavy. Like there's just some kind of darkness in there. The air feels different. And when I was a little kid, I hated that bedroom. If I needed something in there, I would run in and run back out as fast as I could because it always felt like something was standing behind me. There was one time where my aunt, she stayed the night over at the house and she stayed in the bedroom with me. She told me that she kept waking up in the middle of the night because she kept feeling like a light tickling on her back. And at first she thought it was her hair, and then she thought it was me. But then when she rolled towards me, she saw that my back was turned towards her, and I was facing the wall, so it couldn't have been me. So then she rolled the other way. And when she turned the other way, she saw another little girl standing beside the bed, and she refused to sleep in that bedroom again the next day. Years later, we have other guests that said that they have seen the same little girl. Every single one of them at first thought it was me until they realized that I wasn't even in the room. Fast forward to about 2 years ago, we had somebody that was going to stay over, and I decided that I would give them my bedroom and I would go sleep in the creepy one. I thought that I could handle it. At first, everything was just fine, but the later the night went on, the hours went by, I just kept looking at the dark corners of the room, and the room just started to feel so overwhelming to me. I felt like something was just going to rush towards me. And I can't really explain it because it's not like I saw anything, but it just felt like a dreadful feeling where the longer I stayed in there, if I was in there a second longer, literally something bad was going to happen. I ran out of the room and I had one of the worst panic attacks that I've ever had in my entire life. And I have not slept in that room since. The last thing that I have, like example-wise, is my best friend slept over one time and she also believes in like the paranormal. We were both sitting in the living room and she looked over at like the glass door window and she's like, "Who's that little girl standing outside?" I looked immediately and I didn't see anybody there, but I do wonder if whatever everybody was seeing in that room never actually stayed in that bedroom.
Always take a photo of your kid. As Tucker raced out the door, I grabbed him, said hang on, quickly turned him around and snapped a photo with my phone. "Oh, I've heard that one before," Amanda said. "Every time your kid leaves the house, take a photo so you know what he's wearing, right, in case he goes missing." Yep, exactly. It was a lie, but I couldn't tell her the truth. I mean, I had hundreds of photos of Tucker on my phone standing by the door. You know, different outfits, smiling, not smiling, some blurry, but I never skipped taking a photo. Never. And half an hour later, I heard Tucker at the door. Mom, Mom. I said, excuse me, to Amanda, and got up. And I pulled out my photo from today on my phone. And then I looked through the people, and slowly I did a one-by-one comparison. You know, hair, shirt, wrists for watch or no watch, pants, socks, shoes. My hand went for the lock, but then, wait. I noticed in the picture, Tucker's hair was parted on the right. I looked back through the peephole, and his hair was parted on the left. Shoot, I muttered, and I called Tucker's phone and said, where are you? He said, I'm at Adrian's, we're playing with his new Nintendo. And then I pocketed the phone and looked back out the peephole. Porch was empty. Heart pounding, I went back over to the table where Amanda looked at me expectantly. I said, he just needed to ask me something. But anyways, an hour later, Amanda was gone, and I got my laptop out and got to work. Not even 10 minutes later, I heard the melodic chime of the doorbell ring. Tucker was standing on the porch. So I pulled out my phone again. Hair, shirt, wrists, pants, socks, shoes. You know, I went back and forth between the peephole and the photo. This time, his hair was parted on the right. I almost opened the door, but then I realized that his socks were green instead of blue. I walked away, went back to the desk, blowing out a breath, and got back to work, because they always got one thing wrong. It was never a perfect copy. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang again. I walked over to the people, but I could already tell it was the real Tucker. Hair, shirt, wrists, pants, socks, shoes, it all matched. I called his cell, watched him pick it up out of his pocket, and I said, that's you, right? But then a crackle of static had come through the speakers. But Tucker leaned towards the peephole, and his face spread into a horrible grin. His wide blue eyes just stared right at me. He opened his mouth as if he was screaming, and another burst of static came through the phone. And that's when I realized he had all of his teeth. And Tucker was missing this one right here. For every picture going forward, Tucker would have to smile.
Do you want to hear a scary story? Of course you do. Welcome back to Spooky Scary Story Time, where I will be talking about my haunted mirror. Now, I've spoken about my haunted mirror a few times on this page, but I don't think I've told the full story and the things that have happened because of it. So this was around 2 years ago, and I had gone on the Christmas holidays, and where I was staying with my family, there were these really cute antique stores everywhere. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, let's just have a look. And as a little paranormal girly, a psychic medium, I was like, I want to see if I can feel the energy of anything around here. So we went into this one store. It was like jam-packed with things, so it was like, I think 2 different floors, and they had a really like, I don't want to say creepy, but it was a creepy basement, and it was almost pitch black in there. Like, they had a singular light in that basement, and it was just filled with what I can only say looked like a car boot sale. Like, they had tables and tables and tables of just random, it was clothes, it was china, it was like dolls, portraits, you name it, they had it in that basement. In that basement, I started to feel really lightheaded, but I couldn't really explain why. I couldn't pinpoint why I felt that way. I just kept being drawn to this one table. I noticed right at the back, pushed like right at the back, there is this lovely handheld mirror. My name is Lily, obviously, and this handheld mirror had hand-painted flowers on it. So I was immediately drawn to it. There was no information. The tag, I think, literally said like 1920s handheld mirror. So I was like, I need to get this, like, it's calling my name, I want it, I feel so drawn to it, it's like, has flowers on it, my name is Lily, I want it. My girlfriend at the time was super skeptical. She was like, I don't really like it, I don't want it, like, how about you leave it, and then if you really want it you can come back. And I was like, absolutely not, like, I'm getting this now. We also picked up like a couple other things. When we got to the cashier, she was this really lovely lady. We put down the couple of things first, and I remember it's because I was looking around and I was still holding this mirror, and she was like, oh yeah, pay by card. And then I put down the mirror and she looked at me and she went, I only accept cash. Like, she did not want any trace of this mirror being purchased, I don't think. The second I had that mirror in my possession, everything started to go wrong. I got sick basically every other week with illnesses that I had never had, or, you know, illnesses that I normally spring quite quickly back from, and these would just linger. Weird things started happening in my flat at the time. Things would fall over, doors would open and close, I could hear voices when nobody was there. My flatmate at the time would like report weird things happening as well, and she had been living there for years and nothing weird had ever happened until I had that mirror. I had terrible luck. I was having friendship fallouts, I was having like just really bizarre things happen to me. Like, I would lose things all the time, I would have terrible sleep, I would have random things break, things would sort of snap, clothes would rip, my phone would start dying really quickly. Like, everything was just going really bizarrely wrong. And the whole time I am so fixated and so drawn on this mirror. Like, I look into it almost every single day. I feel so attached to it in a way where, like, even when my flatmate or my girlfriend were like, hey, I think it might be the mirror, I refused to hear them out on it. I think it wasn't until like a few months where this had continuously been going on where I started to be like, maybe it is the mirror. And even then, I was just like, well, the mirror, like, isn't doing anything bad. Like, it's not actively harming me. It was kind of being more so like, I'm just having a terrible time in general. My friends would come over and I would show them the mirror, or I would, like, if I let other people hold the mirror, they would get this sense of absolute dread. And they would be like, I hate it, I don't want to hold it, and I just couldn't understand because I love this mirror. Eventually, I think things just got so bad, I decided that, like, enough was enough, really, and I placed the mirror. So I used to have the mirror like facing up so that the sort of the reflection itself would be facing up. I literally said to the mirror, you have to stop this now. I flipped the mirror down and I put crystals on it. Ever since then, I would say that everything's kind of improving and gotten a lot better. I'm still incredibly possessive over that mirror. I don't really like other people touching it. I check on it every single day. I will talk to it all the time. The mirror itself feels lonely more than anything else. I have tried to see if I can communicate with anything, but the mirror itself is incredibly guarded. But ever since I've sort of guarded the mirror in itself and I talk to it, and I've set that boundary with the mirror, I know it sounds insane, it's kind of stopped. That is my spooky scary story time of my haunted mirror. As always, comment down below if you have any spooky scary story times. Feel free to drop me a DM, whatever it might be, and I will get in touch with you if you have a spooky scary story time. And yeah, thank you.
So speaking of scary experiences, I've just had one in the bloody Home Bargains. So I went in there after the gym this morning, and the only reason I'm saying this is because the guy won't see the video. And I was in the aisle looking for a protein bar, actually, and he tapped me on the back and said, "Oh, hiya mate, I used to follow you on TikTok." I said, "Oh right, cool." He said, "Oh yeah, but I don't use social media anymore, so I don't have it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well," I said, "if you ever feel like getting it back, you know, I'm still posting, etc." He said, "Oh well." And actually I got like a bit weird vibes, shall I say. And he said, "Oh, my house is haunted, you know, I'm only local." I said, "Oh, cool, like what have you experienced in there? You know, what sort of things have been going on?" Because don't get me wrong, I do like a personal ghost story. I'll always ask questions. And, you know, goes on to tell me a few things about like keys being moved and hearing like a walking stick banging on the floor from upstairs, where apparently an old lady died in there. And I was like, oh, sorry about that hand gesture. Walking stick getting banged, okay, calm down. And he's telling me about that. And then he says, oh yeah, you'd love to come. You can go and explore the cellar and that on your own one time if you wanted. And he said, see how brave you are, I could lock you in. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds great, thanks. I just said, oh, I'll be in touch if ever. I think that's a good idea. He said, are you sure you don't want my number? Because you could come round later this evening if you wanted. I said, no, thank you, sorry, I'm busy. But I got major, like, creepy vibes. The fella was, not that it matters, but, sort of like, probably going on for my granddad's age. And all audiences are welcome of the Jack-o'-lantern. That's absolutely lovely. And it's for everybody. It's a super inclusive place. But I've come out of it, got in the car and I thought, ooh, that was one interaction where actually it felt a bit weird and uncomfortable. I didn't really like it, especially the bit about getting locked in the basement or cellar, whatever. Yeah, there might be a ghost in there, but you don't really invite a stranger over that night and invite them to explore your cellar and lock them in. I don't know how I feel about that. It feels a bit weird, but I thought, hey ho, this is something I need to share with the audience, because I don't think some people realise sometimes when you make content, some of the funny interactions you have. And don't get me wrong, I bloody love a good interaction with somebody who follows this page. It makes my day, usually. It really does. But this one, it's probably give me something to laugh about in the future. But in the moment, I feel a bit like, oh, I don't really like that.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. This happened in Vicksburg, Mississippi. For anyone who knows the history of the area, you know how much tragedy surrounds it. During the American Civil War, Vicksburg saw some of the bloodiest moments in history. Thousands of people died, and countless hospitals were created to treat the wounded. One of those places was Conn Memorial Hospital. Over the years, stories have been spread about the building being haunted. Countless reports of strange voices, footsteps, shadow figures, and unexplained activity have made it a popular location for people interested in the paranormal. But we had no business being there that night. My friends and I were adrenaline junkies. We loved exploring places that gave us that rush. Even before we arrived to it, though, something felt wrong. I couldn't exactly explain it, nothing had happened, but there was this feeling in the pit of my stomach telling me that we should not be going there. I ended up brushing it off and blaming it on my nerves. A friend and I had made plans to meet some guys we knew there. We messaged them beforehand and they agreed to meet us, grab some food, and then head to the hospital together. So that's what we did. We ate, gathered our equipment, loaded everything up, and headed out. We had cameras, voice recorders, flashlights, everything we thought we needed. The road leading up to the hospital was dark. The building was abandoned. Of course, it felt creepy. But there was something else. Something that I just couldn't shake, but I didn't know what it was. Before this night, we had always heard the same warning from people who had investigated haunted locations. The biggest one being, be careful. Things can attach themselves to you. They can follow you home. Growing up in the South, there's always a saying that people use when leaving places like that. I brought nothing with me, and I take nothing back. It's supposed to be a way of making sure nothing followed you. But that night, of course, we forgot that detail. Forgot to close that door. When we arrived, we parked and started unloading our equipment from my truck. As I was grabbing anything, one of the guys walked over to me. He told me that he was sure he had just heard someone talking inside the building. We assumed it was probably squatters. The area had a lot of abandoned buildings, and places like this were sometimes used by people trying to escape the weather. I personally couldn't imagine anyone willingly spending a night inside that place, but I don't pretend to know what anyone else's situations or struggles are, so. The second we entered, we felt it. It was almost physical. This wall we had to walk through, almost. The air was so heavy in there. For a moment, I almost called the whole thing off, but I didn't. We had entered through the side entrance where ambulances would have dropped off patients. It was the easiest place to hide our vehicles from the road. The hospital had multiple floors, and the stories surrounding the building said each floor had served a different purpose. The first floor was supposedly for elderly patients. The second floor was for psychiatric patients, and the third floor was for trustees. I don't know how much of that was true, but the things we experienced were. At first, things were small. A door shutting somewhere in the distance, footsteps that didn't belong to us, voices, laughter. We had done a complete walkthrough to make sure nobody else was inside the building. It was empty. It was just us. On the first floor, I started walking toward the door leading to the stairwell. The second I reached the handle, every hair on my body stood up, and a wave of chills went through me. Most of the time, I'm not someone who scares easily, so my instinct was to try and ignore it. I opened the door, and immediately, every single flashlight we had with us flickered. All of them, at the exact same time. This didn't make any sense. These were top-of-the-line police-grade flashlights, and I had just replaced the batteries in each of them. I was in front. My best friend was behind me, the guys following behind her. I stepped onto the first stair. My chest got tight, and then almost out of nowhere, silence. Complete silence. No crickets, no footsteps, no breathing. Absolutely nothing. And then we heard them. Footsteps. The heaviest footsteps I have ever heard, and they were coming from above us and then coming from below us. The stairwell went completely dark, and I remember feeling something touch my chest, like hands pressing against me. And then I was shoved hard. I fell backwards into my friend and the guys behind us. I can still remember the darkness of that stairwell perfectly and the sound that came after being shoved, a growl so deep and unnatural that it seemed to vibrate through the metal stairs. Then I felt something around my ankles. Something was pulling me. Whatever had its grip on me didn't want me to leave. My best friend grabbed me and pulled me back to my feet, and we ran. We didn't investigate. We didn't ask questions. We got out, ran straight for our vehicles, and tried to leave. Tried. But my truck wouldn't start. Nothing would. Everything we brought with us was completely drained, and the vehicle was completely dead. I don't know what was there that night, but it had enough power to drain even the car. Eventually, we got everything working and got out of there as quickly as possible. But leaving the building, unfortunately, didn't mean it was over. A few months later, my friend and I were living together, and things started happening. Our belongings would disappear from our rooms. They would go missing and turn up somewhere else. The energy in the house became so suffocating that we started blaming each other. We thought the other person was taking things, throwing things away, moving things, and slowly that tension destroyed our friendship. Looking back now, we both believe something followed us home from that hospital. Years later, Kun Memorial Hospital was eventually demolished after more disturbing events occurred there, including reports of murders and bodies being discovered on the property. I still think about that night, about the energy that made us leave and then followed us home.
Let's read a true, scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. Francesca dressed up in summer attire just for you. This story happened 2 years ago in March of 2024 up in South Wisconsin. My father had a pretty rich business partner up in Wisconsin, but we lived in North Carolina at the time. My dad needed to go up to Wisconsin for a week, which meant being away from me, my mom, and my brother. Instead of leaving us in North Carolina for a week, he brought us with him to Wisconsin. I still say to this day I regret going on the work trip with my family. Fast forward, we get to Wisconsin and we stay in this nice mansion my dad's boss Len does. My room, which I shared with my brother, was on the second floor. There were 3 floors technically. The first was the basement, full of decorations of just junk, and the second floor was where my family stayed. The third was the main entrance to the house. It was just like any other day. I had finished my homeschooling for the day and had the whole house to myself. My brother was out at the gym and my mom and dad were headed to get lunch together after he got off work. I was just getting out of the shower and relaxing and was watching Chicago Med, but everything shifted when I heard a loud voice from upstairs. I took my headphones off and listened for any other noises. Being the paranoid girl I was, I stayed quiet. I flipped through my phone to the Life 360 app where it let me see where my family was. I was hoping it was my mom, brother, or dad, but my heart dropped when I saw I was all alone at the house. Mind you, the mansion is in the middle of nowhere and in the forest. There were few houses close, but I hadn't seen anyone previously. I won't say I spook easily, but a chill ran down my spine when I heard the noise again. It was like the scraping sound of dragging heavy chair across the floor. I sat up straight in bed and listened intently, but no noise. I slowly moved off the bed and went for my brother's small pocket knife that was in my nightstand. I was starting to shake and freak out a little bit as I went to lock the door to my room. The door had big glass panels on it where you can see through, so I closed the shutters and backed away. But I remember I had also locked the bathroom door because you can get to my room through another door connected to the bathroom. But the door wouldn't lock, which was when I really started to panic. I had to hold the old lock on the door with the hand that held the small knife. My other hand fumbled for my phone in my pocket. I was thinking of calling my friend, which was stupid, but I instead called my mom. I remember I was starting to cry as I could hear footsteps right above my head in the kitchen. It felt like forever before my mom answered the phone, and I quietly but frantically told her someone was in the house with me. My dad was in the car with her at the time, and he was driving, but he was very concerned when he heard what I said. He told me to run to his room, which has 3 locks on the door from the inside, but I wasn't a fool. I had seen horror movies before. The girl tries to run and gets unalived immediately, and my mom had also taught me the same thing and told me to stay put and hide. But I knew I couldn't hide because the stupid old door lock wouldn't lock shut, so I stayed on the phone with them as my dad spun the car around and came back to the house as quickly as possible. My poor mom tried to keep me as calm as she could, but I was quietly sobbing, thinking this is how life was going to end for me. My dad was frantically calling his business partner's wife because she was the keeper of the house, and she decided who came and went to the house. She told him the security cameras were out and had been out of service for a while now. That just made me feel even worse. She told him there wasn't supposed to be anyone at the house that day for a house cleaning. My hands were starting to shake as my mom said they were almost home. I was praying to God that I wouldn't be unalived, and I was honestly scared out of my mind. I heard my mom's loud Ford truck pull up to the house, but I didn't leave my spot by the door. Not until my mom came running to me and asked me to open the door, and I did. I had never been so happy to be back in my mom's arms. My dad searched all over the house for someone, but when he was done, he told me no one was there. I was sobbing my eyes out and told him I heard someone in the house with me. Then my mom pointed out something that made my blood go cold. She had forgotten to lock the door when she took my brother to the gym. To this day, I don't know what happened in that house, but I refuse to go back to it ever again. The day after this happened, my mom and my brother left to go to North Carolina. My dad stayed a few more days to finish up the work he had to do. I haven't been back there since and have no plans on returning there. I will say one thing though, I was lucky that day. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to share, just send me a DM.
A couple years ago, I was in this house by myself, living alone. I decided to watch a documentary called Dominor, Temples of Humankind, or something to that effect. The first 2 episodes I watched that same day, I got this interesting feeling. It was a little bit eerie, but it was more intrigue than anything else. The interviewer asked the guy, he said, "Why did you guys decide to make this documentary in the first place?" We're hoping that when people watch this, that they remember. Remember what? He's like, things are stored in people's soul memory, and hopefully the imagery that they see will unlock memories for them. So now at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm hella intrigued, because what do you mean? What is going to get unlocked, right? The next morning, okay, I awoke to myself having a conversation with a lady. I was not dreaming. I was astral traveling. I'm pretty sure I was in Atlantis. Obviously, how would I know for sure, right? But the location looked like what you've seen on Ancient Aliens and things like that. So I'm hardcore mid conversation with this lady. We were sitting outside of a cafe, cobblestone floors, huge columns, decorated columns. There's a water system in front of us, not immediately because we weren't sitting right in front of the water, but it was you could see it. Beautiful too. Everything was so pristine and clean. And this lady, she was my tour guide. I contextually knew all of this. She was slender and tall, taller than your average lady. And she had sort of broccoli-ish hair. Not that it was green or anything, but she just kind of had this poof up top. And I remember thinking that was interesting. And it was like whitish grayish. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I knew she was my tour guide. I was visiting, and she was giving me a tour of and explaining like the architecture, the systems of the city, like all things like that. I knew I was being sucked back into my body. Like, oh, it's time to go. I watched maybe another episode that the next day because I was like really intrigued. And the next episode, they do talk about how iconography of these temples that were created in Italy in this like compound resemble Atlantis. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting. Now I'm not watching any episodes, okay? I think I might have been 3 episodes deep, but I didn't watch anything else. Go to bed at night. Again, just me in the house. And in the middle of the night, I wake up because I sense something is in my room. There appeared a bluish white glow, a serpent-like S, like this, okay? That coiled like that. They look like a bunch of S's squished or like a long-ass snake, okay? But it had a bluish white glow to it. Now I'm intrigued. Now I'm like, I want to go watch that documentary, like the rest of it. Tell me why. In the next episodes, I hadn't even gotten to these yet. In the next episodes, I find out the guy that discovered this discovered a time travel portal. What? The first place that he time traveled to was Atlantis. And the guy goes, well, how do you know the portal is even open? Like, what is it, like a gaping hole or some shit? Like, how do you know it's active and you can walk through it? The guy says a white, bluish glow that looks like a serpent, like this, coiled. That's when you know the portal has opened. Mind you, I haven't even gotten to this episode yet. If you've been there, if you have watched the documentary, if anything weird has happened, please comment. I want to hear your story.
Not only because of this documentary, but because of the times that we are in, because we are in a time of disclosure, because we are in a time of waking up. More and more people are visiting Atlantis. More and more people are having these experiences. This quote unquote tour guide is aware of that. She's saying that she understands more of us are visiting, more of us are learning, more of us are utilizing our skill sets. And this is important and this is necessary. And so the hair is actually like an energy force field that these beings utilize. Not all of them carry it. For her, she does. It's like a communication tool. It also is, if I'm interpreting what she's saying correctly, it is something that is utilized to manage who is coming and going and manage more important, managing the energy that enters so that humans are not leaving a mark, an energetic mark, so as to not to disturb what is there. This documentary is about opening people up to their skill sets. So people will be having similar experiences, but people will also be having very different experiences. That is because it depends on your connection to these beings. Are you family with these beings, meaning you've been them before, you've been with them before, or are you simply a visitor? Atlantis had a similar problem that we are having now, which is technology is outpacing consciousness. And this is not what you want. This is what happened in Atlantis. Their technology outpaced their consciousness and ultimately was their demise. But what this tour guide, this being, is showing us is a different choice, a different way. What if Atlantis has chosen or chose a different course? A different path. And we are being opened to that. Hopefully we do not make the same mistake. We want consciousness to outpace technology. And all that requires is all of us to tap into our skill sets like she is doing. But with that, you tap into your skill sets. You find your practice so that this isn't something you do randomly. And this isn't something that you do to bolster you. It's something you do to be of service to those around you and to other planets. It's something you do as a teaching tool, as a way to be a part of a community, to bond and build our consciousness together. This is very important because a lot of people are talking about enlightenment and being able to travel. I'm not referencing her, travel and do all these, what I refer to as party tricks. I even refer to some of the work I do as a quote unquote party trick. I'm not demeaning the work. I'm saying work is simply a party trick unless it is followed up with compassion, teaching, community, and sharing it with others and building up others so that everyone is doing the work that I'm doing. Everyone is doing the work that she is doing in their own way. And then you'll notice as a community, everyone has just enough, everyone's skill sets are different enough to complement each other, to complement the planet, and to be able to supersede technology.
What would you do if the only thing that warned you that your brother wasn't really your brother was your cat? Scary story time. When I was around 11 or 12 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night with an overwhelming feeling that something was watching me. I sat up in my bunk bed with my brother asleep in the bunk below and looked around the room. Standing at the bedroom door was what I thought was my brother. I have 3 brothers in total. He was half hidden behind the door with only half of his body and face visible. I kept calling his name and asking what he was doing, but he never replied. Instead, he began slowly swaying from side to side. At that moment, my cat jumped down from her bed on top of the cupboard, landed in front of me, and started growling at him. She has been watching from her cat bed this whole time. When I looked back at my brother, something had changed. It looked like him, but his face had become unnaturally gaunt, and his eyes were nothing but black holes, and his skin glowed with a dull, sickly white sheen. I had completely frozen in terror. Then it hit me that it wasn't my brother. I grew up in a house where paranormal things happened all the time, but this was the first time I'd ever seen something take the form of a person. I'd always been told the same thing: ignore it, don't give it attention. So I slowly laid back down, turned to face the wall, and pretended it wasn't there. I don't know how long it stayed in my room after I forced myself to go back to sleep. And that's the end of the story. If you have your own mimic encounters that you'd like to share, please let me know. I'd love to read it.
Listen, we don't get scared and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this girl that kept on dreaming of her uncle wanting to be saved, and her uncle was showing her things and revealing secrets and all of that, and her family led her to believe that she needed to go to initiation school, only to find out that the family was the one that made the uncle a zombie. So back in high school, I had this girl that was my friend. She was in a different transport, different school as me, and we would meet when we would come out early on Fridays, and then we were waiting for other schools to come out, and we were talking. This girl was insane. Like, I took her like somebody that was not well, because she would do the wildest things. Like, we would be standing and talking. She was a really sweet girl at times, but sometimes she lost her mind. I felt like she lost her mind, but I was wrong to think like that, because I did not understand until now, right? So we would always be standing, and then she would just get into a trance out of nowhere, call me, and now she's telling me my family business, and I'm scared. And like, at times I do not want to hang around her, because once she starts these things of her, she does not stop. It's so hard to stop her. Like, sometimes it gets to a point whereby her family has to come get her. And this girl was from a very rich family, okay? So she would tell me like, oh, she needs to go and get like to the initiation school, and I would encourage it. I would always be like, no girl, go to the initiation school, go, it's okay. And she'd be like, no, I'm scared. You're telling me you want to go, I'm saying go. You're saying you're scared. She confused me. So eventually at one point we sat down, and she told me that like she basically dreams of her uncle. Her uncle is the one that tells her what to do. Her uncle is basically telling her to go and fetch her things, blah blah blah. Apparently this uncle of hers was a traditional healer. And so she was telling her family that she needs to go to the initiation school, and she was told who she needs to go initiate at, blah, blah, blah. And the family was all for it, y'all. They were all for it. And eventually she went to initiation school, and she never came back to high school. Like, I never seen her again. And that was the last I saw her at that time. Fast forward, this year I saw her, whatever, and she knows that I do story time. So she was like, hey girl, I have a story for you. And this girl, I was scared to speak to her at first because, guys, this was the type of girl that would come with traditional healer cloths to school. Sometimes she would plait her hair, look so neat, so nice. By the time she comes out of school, that hair is unplaited. Apparently she would unplait the hair mid-school day. Like, this girl was going through it during her high school years. Fine. Now she's explaining to me what actually happened. So apparently she had an uncle who was a traditional healer, and that uncle was a traditional healer, passed away because her dad gave this man poison. And used this man as a zombie so that they can make money, because the uncle was powerful spiritually like that. Like, if you used, her dad was told at a traditional healer that, listen, if you use this man as a tool to make money, you are rich. I'm telling you, you're going to be rich, because the kind of spirituality, the kind of spiritual power that this man holds, you are going to be rich forever. And then they had my friend, whatever. And then as she started growing up, she says she started dreaming of this particular uncle because the uncle died before she was born, right? So the uncle died before she was born, and she started dreaming of this uncle, and she would tell her grandmother, and her grandmother would try and tell her that your dad is no good. I don't trust your dad. This is why. Also, another thing, the grandmother and the father never got along. Mind you, this is mother and son. They never got along. Like, the grandmother hated like her son or whatever, even though the son extended his mother's house. He extended his mother's house, bought the mom a car. The mom still hated him, even though he did all of those things. The grandmother would be like, if ever I knew that he was extending my house, I would have told him no. And she didn't understand until the day she went to traditional healer school, initiation school, sorry. That's where she went. When she got there, she started having serious dreams of this traditional healer, the one that's initiating her. She started having dreams of this lady trying to kill her. And now she didn't know what to do, because whenever she told her dad, like, oh, I'm dreaming of this lady trying to do X, Y, and Z to me, and her dad would be like, no, it's not like that. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And then she eventually decided one day, no man, that same uncle came to her one day and was like, listen, my dear, if you do not want to die because your life is in danger, call your grandmother right now and tell her to come fetch you now, with the police at that. And so she woke up and she just did exactly what the uncle did. She called her grandmother and was like, listen, I'm in a place like this and that, and I'm scared. So the grandmother was like, listen, make no mistake, I'm there. The grandmother came to fetch my friend, right? She was still a minor, whatever. The parents did try to fight for her, whatever. And the grandmother was like, no, these people are putting this child in danger, because how can you take a minor out of school and take them to traditional healer, to initiation school? Why aren't they going to school at least, whatever? And then the police officers asked the girl. Obviously, my friend was like of age. Isn't when you are above the age of 12 years and they ask you who do you want to stay with, you can decide who you want to stay with, even though they can fight for you in court, but you can choose. So she eventually was like, no, I'm gonna stay with my grandmother. She started telling her grandmother, she told her grandmother everything, that girl, like, this is the dreams that I was having, this was what was happening. And the grandma sat her down and was like, listen, you're old enough now, I'm gonna tell you what happened. So the grandmother was like, listen, your mom and dad are not good people, number one. Two, your dad sacrificed
what's going on around
your uncle because he wanted to be rich. Your uncle was a traditional healer, and the problem with your uncle was he trusted your dad. I knew the grandmother was like, as a woman, when you've given birth to a child that is going to amount to nothing. She's like, my friend's dad is somebody that loved money to the point where you could tell that this person could kill for money. There was a time where he went to jail because they had robbed a store and somebody died, and he saw in his eyes that this person was not remorseful of what he did. So she knew that he was capable of something like that. And when the uncle died, that day she told the uncle not to go there. Do not go to this man's house. He went, he came back with a stomach bug, he died. At the hospital, they said they don't see anything because allegedly the dad paid doctors so that the dad paid the doctors so that they give a certain report. You understand? And so since the grandmother did not have money to ask for another post-mortem report, she just let things be, but she knew that it wasn't it. She's like, she knows that the dad is using her son as a zombie, but she can't do anything because her dad, my friend's dad, has the uncle's brain, and if he has the uncle's brain, there's nothing she can do. So she's like, the uncle is basically telling you in his dreams to save him. But you're not going to save him traditionally. You are going to pray, my dear. You are going to pray that God sets that man free. And she's like, fine. The grandmother took her to church. They prayed and fasted for a good 21 days. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. they were fasting, praying. And eventually one day she says she had a dream of the uncle basically opening his hands, wearing all white and ascending to heaven. And she knew that the man was free. And from there on, things started going downhill for her dad and her mom, because again, she's not an only child. There are other kids there, but the other kids obviously knew what their parents were doing, because she was the last born and then the others were older. So when she tried to tell them that the dad is this, they denied, like, no, he's not. But that's because they knew what the dad was doing. And the oldest of them was feeding the uncle, the zombie that they had, that was generating money for them. And things went from bad to worse for them. Like, it's just terrible. And my friend is like, she's not even gonna get involved. They tried to call her sometimes to please help them. She's like, nope. You guys tormented me. Oh, another thing. When she was at that traditional healer, her dad wanted to unalive her. The dad wanted to kill her because she knew too much, and she was eventually going to expose them one day. So they knew she was a threat. They took her to that traditional healer school so that they can devise a plan so that they can kill her and act like it was an accident. And the dad has money, so of course they're going to pay somewhere, somehow, so that they don't get into trouble for what they did. And so baby girl got saved, and she's been living with her grandmother ever since.
But we all don't like basements, right? Right. Who the fuck like a basement? Who likes a basement? So I'm downstairs in my basement doing my laundry, right? Every time I go down there, I hate it down there. It's so scary down there to me. I don't care. And what makes it worse is that there's not even lights in my basement. The only light we have is from the windows that's down there coming from the outside. So I'm doing my laundry, right? I put my clothes in the washer. It was exactly like an hour and 17 minutes it said it was going to be washing for. So I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I go upstairs, it's normal. I come upstairs, I start exercising. I was just doing mad stuff to kill time. Just now, I went downstairs to go pick up my clothes from out of the washer. And while I'm down there, I just feel so scared, like, so scared. But I'm brushing it off, like, may the Lord be with me while I'm down here. Like, just making sure that the Lord is protecting me. So I go upstairs, and of course I got to look behind me to make sure that nothing is following me up the stairs. Nothing is following me. I don't see nothing weird, right? Like I said, there's no lights that's on down there. Like, none of the lights usually work because this basement is so old. I go drop off some of my clothes in my room, and I come back down for the other load. Like the rest of the load that I left in the washer. Why I go downstairs and there's a light on, and it's the light right in front of the washer machine. So I'm standing there looking at the light like, how the fuck did that light come on? Mind you, I ain't ever see that light on in like months. And I don't even understand how the light will end up on because I don't know where the light switch is. So I don't think I bumped into it because I pass it all the time. How did I bump into it? I don't know. The light was just on and it was bright. And I was just like, let me hurry up and get the rest of my clothes and let me leave because I'm not staying down here to figure out what the fuck turned the light on. But what makes it even worse is that my parents have this big ass Chucky doll that's the size of me damn near because I'm short. And it's like an electronic Chucky doll. So he talks, he moves, he has a knife in his hand. But like we left it down there since like around Halloween time. And he hasn't moved ever since. But like just him being down there while that weird ass shit just happened, like that scared the fuck out of me. And I'm not even scared of Chucky. So I don't know. I just felt like I needed to tell y'all that because that was so weird.